voluminous history of the organization.
About 15 years on. It is 1 o'clock, and I am calling to order the annual meeting of the Board of Directors of the Capital Area Regional Public Facilities District. And I will begin by getting out my list, calling the roll. Ken Parsons.
Here.
Dave Nicandri.
Present.
Jeff Line.
Here.
Whitney Godby.
Present.
Thank you, Whitney. Ann Campbell. And Chris Glight. Are not here at the moment, but hopefully they'll be able to join us. We do have a quorum and we are able to proceed. I don't know if I noted the time, but it was 1 o'clock when we started, so we're underway. The next item on our agenda is approval of today's agenda and the consent agenda, which includes the minutes of our last annual meeting, plus the 3 special meetings we've had during the past year. And I would ask if anybody has any amendments or corrections to any minutes that we need to pull out. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda and the consent agenda.
So move.
I'll second. Moved by Dave Nicandri and seconded by Ken Parsons to approve the agenda and consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. The agenda and consent agenda is approved. From my understanding, we have no one signed up for public comment either in person or online. Correct, Alyssa? So there's no public comment today. Our next agenda item is to welcome Jeff and Ann. And my thought was to make this kind of a shared welcome because we haven't had much a chance to get to know each other since we have new members come on. So Jeff, could I ask you to, first of all, welcome. Could I ask you to introduce yourself, and then I think we'll all do a very brief introduction of ourselves. So yes. Ann Campbell's now present. Welcome, Ann.
Hey there.
You're just in time for the official welcoming on the agenda. So we're just at the point where I was saying that we'll kind of go around the table and introduce all ourselves so we have a shared welcome. But I was asking Jeff if he could start by introducing himself and just a brief bit about yourself.
Thank you. So Jeff Line, been a Thurston County and mostly Lacey resident for almost 30 years. 3 kids, all have gone through Thurston County schools, and my wife works for a Thurston County School District. And so most recently, from a nonprofit standpoint, I've been the president of Chinquale Booters Soccer Club. So if you don't know who they are, they serve specifically the city of Lacey boundaries. And I've been with them for almost 11 years, all in, supporting that program. And just professionally, vice president for talent acquisition for a large radiology company, nationwide company. And so just glad to be here to help and learn about the process here and see what we do. So pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Welcome. Ann, could I possibly turn to you and ask you to say hello and introduce yourself?
Sure. Ann Campbell, born and raised here in Western Washington, moved to the Thurston County area in 1988 and have either lived or worked here ever since. And I work for the state. I will be celebrating 30 years with the state at the end of next month. And during that time period, I have worked as a residential mortgage regulator, infrastructure investment underwriter and policy, and also in affordable housing, with a brief stint in broadband. I am excited to be a part of this because I think that what this group does is very important, and it is a very important part of our economic development strategy for our area. And it is deeply important for me that we are successful in that particular avenue. I live currently in Tumwater with my husband, and 3 dogs, 2 cats, and in our off time, we spend a lot of time out hiking and enjoying the great outdoors.
Thanks so much and welcome to the board. Glad to have you. I'll go next. I'm David Brine. I have lived in the Olympia area since 1976 after moving from the Wenatchee Valley. I had 37 years in state government. I'm retired now. I served in various communication roles through those years. And prior to that, I was a radio news reporter. I used to be on KGY radio way back in the day. I've served on this board since 2007. Mr. Halverson was the one who welcomed me to the board at that time. In the kind of the volunteer world, I served for a time on the Hands-On Children's Museum board and the board of the Capital Bicycling Club. And that's me. Dave, can I ask you to go next?
Yes, my name's David Nicandri. I've been a resident of Thurston County since 1972. I was a member and first elected to the Tumwater City Council in the mid-1970s, which I enjoy sharing with the current city council whenever I show up, since that was before many of them were even born. I was the longtime director of the Washington State Historical Society. I still keep my hand in history, writing books and other local projects like you saw recently, Dave. I was appointed to this by Mayor Sullivan. I think maybe Mayor Komet, but certainly reappointed by Mayor Sullivan of Tumwater. I'm the Tumwater representative. My interest in this lies in the fact that I was and still am an advocate for this area of securing a minor league baseball team or a summer collegiate baseball team. I had hopes for the RAC project along those lines, but it didn't eventuate, but I'm still here. For now, anyway.
That's awesome. Whitney, could we ask you to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Whitney Godby, and I am a Lacey resident. I moved here in 2018. I have worked for Dancing Goats and the South Sound YMCA in the accounting field. And I'm currently a admin assistant for the Thurston County WSU Extension Office. And I have an 8-year-old son, and my interest in this board was because we are avid users of the Children's Museum and the RAC facilities.
Excellent, thank you. And Mr. Parsons.
Well, I'm Ken Parsons. I've been Secretary Treasurer since the beginning. And I was appointed in the beginning, whenever that was, John, 2002, yeah. And I've been a resident in this area since 1973. I was raised in Mount Vernon, Washington. And I've been involved in too many things to name over the last 50-some years. But I feel very strongly about this particular project and projects that we fund. And so I've been happily serving on here since we began. By the way, I'm a Thurston County rep.
Yeah, I'm an Olympia rep. Tumwater. And I think Jeff is Jeff and Ann are at large. And Whitney is the Lacey rep, right? Great. Okay. I think I'm going to turn it over to you for an overview and orientation.
Thank you, President Bryan. I appreciate that. My name is Shannon Kelly Fong. I'm the Assistant City Manager for the City of Lacey. And I'm going to be joined here today by Alyssa Fontaine, who is our City Clerk, and also by John Halverson, who, as was mentioned earlier, has been a longtime participant in a lot of things at Lacey, including the CAR-PFD. And together, we wanted to provide some background on not only PFDs in Washington State, but also the history of the CAR-PFD. So John, if you want to join us at the table, what I'll do is I'll start off by just providing some background on PFDs broadly, and then I'll turn it over to John to provide some background on this particular PFD. And then eventually we'll work through some more information and we'll hand it off to Alyssa. And she's going to talk us through a kind of best practices for public meetings and what that looks like. So we've got a short presentation for you, only 44 slides, so please bear with us. So like I mentioned, we'll go over the history and overview. We'll talk about roles and responsibilities. Our clerk is going to walk through the Open Public Meetings Act, public records, and then Robert's Rules, pro tips, and then some additional resources that you all can take a look at to get more information on all of these topics. So just to start us off with history and an overview and governance. So I know many of you are familiar, you have binders or the information that's included in all of the agenda packets. But public facility districts were created to give local jurisdictions a dedicated funding pool for major projects that really focused on regional economics or community benefits. These are things that were considered, projects that were maybe too large for one jurisdiction alone to be able to set up and fund. And I know, John, you have some background on the history of that creation. Do you mind talking a little bit to that?
Okay, I can. For the first 2 hours of my talk.
Excuse me, I have to leave now.
Yeah. These elected officials, you give them a microphone, you're in big trouble. I also have a little history of the regional athletic complex, which began before this. If you'll bear with me, I'm just a couple of words. I made a copy of it so you players can get up. One of the things that was fun for me was to go through and list all the county commissioners, mayors, city managers, financial people, and staff who worked on this for all these years. Well, I'll give you a copy if you want that. Just a little bit about the beginning of it. In October of 1998, while I was still on the city council, I served from 91 to 99. The city of Lacey and Thurston County agreed to jointly purchase 68 acres of land off Stilcombe and Marvin Roads for the purpose of developing a sports complex. Soccer, soccer group, what's it called? Chinquali, I'm sorry. Well, lobbying us really hard to get something and participated in a lot of meetings to make that happen. The land was outside the city. So the two parties, the county and the city, agreed to jointly own and maintain the complex. And that was a real challenge in terms of trying to fund and pay for the maintenance. And so Thurston County didn't have a lot of money, but the city had enough to get going on the maintenance and grading and all that. In 2002, I'll back up one more thing. There used to be something called the Visitors and Convention Bureau. I was the city of Lacey representative to it. Mark Fouch was the Olympia representative. And there were people from all the jurisdictions. But Representative Gary Alexander was on that committee as well. And Mr. Fouch would always complain, Olympia was only one of 4 capitals in America with no convention center. So the impetus to get going on a convention center was very strong. The Economic Development Council gave the VCB a few bucks to hire a consultant, a person who had helped other cities build a convention center. So we did that for quite a while. Didn't get a lot of money or action going until the 2002 legislative session, when Representative Gary Alexander sponsored a bill to expand and open up to all cities and counties the opportunity to obtain state sales tax rebates for public facilities. The PFD law had already been successful by King County to build Safeco Field. So that's how it began. 0.033 of all state sales tax derived from our 4 jurisdictions would then be returned to a local facilities district who would decide what public facilities would be built. Had to be something that would serve all the communities. So with the help of Representative Sam Hunt and Representative Karen Frazier, our former mayor in Lacey, they got it through. That began the discussion about which facilities should be built in which jurisdictions. Tumwater wanted a swimming pool facility for that. Olympia didn't have a project right at the beginning, but our friend Patty Belmonte and others were thinking about the Hands-On Children's Museum. And of course, the city and the county had already purchased a sports complex. So Manager Cuyo had already put staff on building a tremendous PowerPoint background, finance plan, the whole deal. So that's when the discussions began about what facility would happen. Well, there was, as you might imagine, quite a bit of haggling over that. When it passed, the law would have allowed for up to $25 million to be sold in the form of bonds. And then the sales tax, that 0.003 or 0.033% would be used to pay off the bonds. And so that was the game. Well, it took 3 years of tremendous public events and arguments and discussions. And so when we started it, there was 3 years gone already of the capacity, which of course diminished both what would be available for the sports complex and for the city, for the Hands-On Museum. So in 2002, myself and Mayor Graham Sackerson co-chaired the Lacey Parks Bond, first one that had passed in the western part of the state for several years. We got 3 million of that to be dedicated to the sports complex. So now the city had match, if you will. In 2003 is when the 4 jurisdictions formed this group. So actually it was signed, I think, on, I have a copy, June 25th, 2002 was the interlocal agreement. First one was between the city and the county because Olympia, again, didn't have a project ready, wasn't ready to sign some interlocal. So I'm sure she's going to go over the details. But about that time also, I'd been off the council since 99, the end of 99. I got myself appointed to the Thurston County Parks Board, where I worked with Michael Welter who was the parks director, and Don Krupp, who was the county administrator, to recommend to the Board of County Commissioners that some conservation futures fund money, which they had in the city council, or sorry, at the county, could be used to purchase additional land and do a land swap to get more acreage for the regional athletic complex. Now, that turned out to be the other 26 acres, which nobody can touch because the gophers are there, you know. But anyway, at the time, we thought it was a pretty good deal. Again, after a 3-year struggle, the projects were finally approved. Lacey would get 72% of the revenue, and the Hands-On Museum would get 28%. And that's how the beginning of that started. The original team was Peter Gayton from Tumwater, Gene Mandenberg from Olympia, Dennis Reed from Lacey, Ken Parsons representing the county, Bob Wohlers at large, who was also a Tumwater resident, Sandra Miller at large, who was also an Olympia resident at the time, when manager of the Governor House Hotel, and myself. In the beginning, to start the whole thing, the law said there had to be community support for the person that became the president or chair. And my friend Ken Balsley, who was president of the Lacey Chamber, nominated me. In the beginning, that was the only position that had to be approved by all 4 jurisdictions. So I had to go before each of them. I got all 7 votes in Tumwater, all 7 in Olympia, all 7 in Lacey, and the 3 county commissioners. So I'm the only person who had 21 yes votes to become leader and foreman. And we got all the other people in, and I kept doing it. And I held that position from 2002 to 2012. And that's all I'm going to say. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, I'm sure there's going to be a lot more, John, that you have to say as we work through the presentation, and I appreciate the overview. And I'll just take a pause in the presentation to see if there's any questions over the materials that John just went through. One thing I do want to make a note of is that we are going to get an update on the rec here today. And so I know John mentioned the comment about the development of the phase 3 of what we're calling the rec. And so we will have an update on that because we are going through the process of taking a look at what we can develop on that site.
Don, can I have a copy? Do you have a copy?
Yeah, I'll need a copy for all of you. So, and I think I have enough for staff, but let's get all the players first. That's one more of this, and I don't know if you want one.
Thank you.
I got one more.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Board member Nicandri, you got a question?
Several actually, and I really do appreciate the convening of this agenda item. I apologize for my previous tantrums on this point, but it's good to be here nonetheless. So, John, I have numeric questions and procedural policy questions. The 0.033 is not an added tax, but that's a rebate to this facility of taxes that are otherwise being collected or kind of set aside
At the state.
at the state level.
That's
Can they only be used to pay off bonds? Or can they be used for, seems to me we've allocated resources for paying recurring operations, and so I see.
Yeah, I think each jurisdiction who owns the facility has to match and pay stuff, and there's always administrative and staff support things. In the beginning, Olympia was the agency that supported the PFD. And after a while, they asked Lacey to take it on.
That was one of my other.
Since Lacey was getting the lion's share of the bucks, Greg said, yep, we'll take it on. So
Okay.
that's when city of Lacey became the administrative support group.
Okay.
You have
That answers another question I had.
We do have a couple slides coming up too on
Yeah.
what the funding can be used for as well. So we'll get into more detail on that topic.
I went through 300 pages of documentary history earlier this
Wow,
week.
yeah. I tried and I gave up.
Um,
I went to my own notes.
to Alyssa. And I think you've also answered, and because one of the things that mystified me was why did Lacey have kind of a one-off agreement with the county? But I think you've explained it.
Timing wise,
It's because the county and the city jointly owned the property of the rack at one point, but it's a wholly owned operation of the city of Lacey now, I presume. Did the city buy out the
Yes.
county's interest?
yes, there literally was a step down buyout agreement.
Okay.
No.
So the county was made whole in the sense,
Yeah.
they got their money
Yeah,
back.
more or less. There was a lot of discussion about various pots of money at both the county and city. And at various times, the city would be flush or the county would be flush and the other one wouldn't. And so the managers would make a deal and put something in front of the elected officials.
So early on, was it presumed that the art and convention facility, that was going to be the major deal, and that's why Olympia was going to be the administrating entity?
Yep.
But that project died.
It died.
And so the larger project became RAC, and so the administrative responsibility shifted to the city of Lacey. I was busy up in Tacoma then building
Yes.
another facility, and so I was not, although I lived here, wasn't paying attention. Why did Olympia abandon the convention and facility and such?
The same reason that it happens today. When the consultant brought in the information and there was more research done by the city of Olympia staff, convention centers do not pay for themselves. They almost always require a nearby hotel or some other entity that generates the cash to keep it going and subsidize it basically. So that's what you see going on, for example, in Spokane. They have a convention center right next to their downtown business. They have several hotels in the area. They have a lot of other what do you call it, retail revenue coming in to help support it, and the city supports it. So
Okay, so it didn't pencil out.
didn't pencil out.
And so the agreements were modified to switch the Olympia project to the hands-on museum.
Literally, there was a public meeting, an announcement, come one, come all, bring us your projects. And so once upon a time in the general administration building, that big hot auditorium, Olympia would come in, make their presentation, Tumwater would come in, make theirs, Lacey would come in and make theirs. And the general public was there too, and they actually took sort of in, not binding, but votes and polls by the citizens from the county or whoever was in the audience. And the Lacey project had been so far advanced that, and so much more time put on it, that it won the hearts and minds of the people in the audience.
Is there a minimum size facilities project required by statute? And is there a maximum sized
No.
facility? No maximum.
No, the only thing is, what is the sponsoring jurisdiction going to put into it?
They requires 1/3 match, I see.
When I left in 2012, there were 26 public facility districts in the state. And I got to visit at least 5 convention centers and facilities like this. Each one had a different arrangement with the local jurisdiction. Some had multiple jurisdictions, 2 little towns together, because neither of them could handle it maintenance wise. Because once you build it, you got to maintain it.
Right.
And that's a big part of this whole thing.
Lastly, can we go back to John's stipulation that the funding is for capital facilities, but I have perhaps a remote memory of us authorizing operating expenses out of the resources we accrue. So Troy, is that a question that is better addressed to you or Alyssa or?
So, Greg, you can absolutely answer this question. Understand it. We have some slides, but you go for it.
Sure. Yeah, we are absolutely using some of the funds for operations. We're currently using 400,000 per year for the operations of the ROC. You could use those funds for everything from capital improvement to maintenance and operations. So it's certainly eligible.
Those are PFD funds we're talking.
Correct.
I mean, city's sovereign with its own money, but I was just curious. So it is possible to use public facility district set aside funding for current operations of projects that were bonded by the same revenue stream.
That's correct. So the only 2 centers that those operations could be used for are the hands-on museum as well as the ROC.
Thank you.
And effectively, the statute reads that it's for development, improvement, and operations.
Okay, thank you, John.
Great. Well,
We'll
John,
likely come back to you.
I absolutely, and thank you. I appreciate the history and background too. Obviously, haven't been here myself since 2002, so I learned a lot from that background. And so a lot of this too is just general background to build off of what John was talking about. And John, certainly interject if we get something off or if there's some local elements that you want to add in there. But like we were just talking about, we have this dedicated funding tool going back to, hey, it can be used for the development, it can be used to improve, it can be used for operation of those regional facilities and really things that are really big and one jurisdiction alone may not be able to take on. John highlighted this already, that one of the mechanisms that previously existed was the state shared tax credit. And so like was talked about, that 0.033% of the state sales and use tax from the state itself could go to these projects. But this was only for a short period of time. This is not something that is open for anybody who is now creating a PFD. You can still create PFDs under the statute, but there are some items to consider, like this will not be one of your funding mechanisms. And so it only applied to PFDs that were created before July 31st, 2002, and importantly commenced construction of a regional center prior to January 1st, 2004, which I think John highlighted kind of the really the rush to kind of get some of those projects with some of those meetings back in 2003 and 2004 to make sure that we were meeting all of these requirements to be able to access this funding source. So while this funding source in particular is not available anymore, there are other funding sources that a PFD could use. They may impose a number of taxes and fees, including admission taxes, parking taxes, general obligation and revenue bonds, lodging taxes for county PFDs, and then also user charges and fees. And there are also certain sales tax too that can be included for a public facilities district, and we can talk about that in just a second here. As part of, and I know you all are well aware because you sit on this board and you read all of the information in the charters, but the governance of a public facility district, it is a separate municipal corporation. There is a board of directors. You are all one of them. And you're appointed through the participants, so the cities and then the regional. We talked about, you know, who's in what role here on the PFD. And it really helps ensure that there's representation across the jurisdictions, recognizing that these were regional projects. And oftentimes you have a charter, and as you all certainly saw probably through your materials, you absolutely do. It's not required, but it is something that a lot of PFDs have. There has been some changes in state law since, well, several changes dating back, you know, from the original inception, as we've already talked about with the state sales credit, but there's been some more recent activity as well that we wanted to highlight. And that is in 2023, there was the additional public facility districts that was added. And this allows legislative authorities of 2 or more contiguous cities to form an additional PFD before July 1st, 2026. This one has a very limited scope. It's really for constructing and maintaining financing and operations, as we highlighted with the previous PFD, of a regional aquatic and sports facilities, including community pools. This additional PFD could also impose a voter approved sales and use tax of up to 0.2%. So this would be a simple majority. You'd have to go out to the area that it was serving and get approval in order for this additional body board to get that taxing authority. Jurisdictions, importantly, must have already had a PFD, and that's where that additional PFD comes for. There has to be an existing PFD in order to be able to access this PFD that's provided by SB 5001. Going back to the PFD that's already created here, the CAR-PFD, like we talked about, is an independent municipal corporation. It's a special taxing district that was created in 2002. And we've got all the partners up here. John, thank you for, again, providing that background and history of how everybody got involved into this. You can see that we have Olympia, Tumwater, Lacey, and Thurston County, all partners in the CAR-PFD. When we look at the CAR-PFD, we talked about that special state sales share. I do want to highlight that as part of the interlocal agreement, this is highlighting this over here. It gives the authority of the CAR-PFD to authorize that tax specifically. And it also says that no other duties are authorized to be performed under this district. So it's expressed that, hey, we're going to collect the state sales tax only. The board finances payments the board finances payments on bonds issued by Lacey and Olympia for the construction of the 2 regional centers that we've already had some discussion on, which the RAC and the Hands-On Children's Museum, both of which you're going to get a presentation overviewing an update of where some projects are going on. And the scope of the CAR-PFD is expressly limited to these 2 projects. On the CAR-PFD state sales tax credits, there's been some changes here recently, and I know Troy mentioned it at the last annual meeting. But the original term for the collection of this credit was 25 years after the first tax collection in 2003. So it would have expired in 2027. However, there's been a lot of advocacy, and this has now changed. So you can see that on the 3rd bullet point down here, state legislation in 2017 extended that state sales credit another 15 years. So for Lacey specifically, this would have extended that to 2042. And then here recently, in 2025 with HB 1109, it extended it by another additional 15 years. And so that takes it out to 2057 for Lacey. The CAR-PFD.
Can I ask a
Yeah,
quick question
absolutely.
related to that? I know in my timeline here, the interlocal agreement was amended in July of 2025 to account for that first extension of 15 years, I think.
I believe that would have been accounting for the second
Was that the
amendment
second?
for the additional 15 years if it was in 2025, because that would have occurred potentially earlier. But I'm looking to Troy to see if he's got an answer for that.
I'm having trouble.
Having trouble visualizing those years.
The law passed in 2025, but the interlocal agreement was amended. Well, it doesn't matter, but it was prior to 2025, it was amended for the first 15-year extension. So I'm assuming there'll need to be another amendment of the interlocal agreement to account for this additional.
We will definitely look into that and make sure to report back out on
12, 21, 23.
12, 21,
23.
23.
Yes,
So that would.
December 2023, yeah.
That would mean that we definitely need to look into that for capturing that additional extension if there wasn't language that expressly stated that, you know, if extended by state law, that you could have it extended till whenever the state had passed that. So we'll take a look into that and see if that's another step that we need to take over the next couple of years.
Great, thanks.
Do those extensions only apply to the RAC? They don't apply to the Hands-On Children's Museum?
No, we were just giving the examples of the RAC specifically based on when debt was issued.
Okay.
Yep.
So what would it be for the Hands-On
I
Children's?
believe it's 2041 and 2056. Is that correct, Troy?
It's the other way around. It's
Other way.
plus 1 year.
2043 and 2058.
Can we ask questions as you go along?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, please don't hold them in.
Well, I've got a lot, as must be evident. So if you go back a slide or two, maybe one more. Let me ask the question, and maybe you can find. So you say the current public facilities district is limited to 2 projects. One of your slides says that.
It'd be prior to the 20.
Okay, so thank you, John. So it's limited to the 2 projects because those projects were obligated before the time limit expired.
Yeah, she's got one up there that says nothing after 2004.
Okay, so there's not another bite at the apple at what I would call the rebate of state funds. That's only going to happen for the 2 obligated projects.
Correct.
There's no adding a 3rd project to tap into that.
To get that revenue source.
Because that is a prized asset, and everyone must realize that.
Yeah, without any change at the, state legislature to provide that opportunity again, that has sunsetted.
Okay,
But if I may, to that point, there was another slide that had other options, that if there were another project,
Yeah.
we would have to consider the other funding sources we'd have to consider one of those. That one, right? So if there were a 3rd one out there, there's probably 30 of them out there, right? So the only way to do that would be to essentially access new funding, not through the current structure.
yes.
Correct. And again, reading through the interlocal agreement, the authority for the CAR-PFD specifically is for the state sales credit.
Right.
There could be other PFDs created that could go after different revenue sources or an amended interlocal agreement.
So a new PFD would have to be created, not this board. A new PFD would have to be created, again, all hypothetical, to access those potential funds. Totally new, separate, same timeline, same thing that you basically created, just not what this group is no longer creating, no longer adding. It's using what we have and that's it, correct?
Okay, that's helpful.
Thank you.
But you had a slide there, a new PFD has to be constituted, if that's a word, constituted is the word, by an entity that's already in the existing PFD.
Right.
So Yelm and Tenino and Tumwater can't do a PFD.
Well, Tumwater,
Yes,
because they're,
and that's where I'm getting, just to put my cards on the table. Because I'm curious about the Tumwater angle and all of this.
So, and actually, this is a really good point of clarification. So this is specifically for the additional PFD.
Yes.
So that is for a regional aquatic and sports facilities. So per state law, any city or town, or any city or town or group of contiguous cities of towns in a county of less than 1 million in population can create a public facilities district. So this is an additional on top of if one had already been created, you could have a second one that would only be for this purpose.
But it would be a whole different municipal entity with a different board and everything. Okay,
Just like what Lacey attempted to do this last or recent voting cycle, maybe not a PFD, but it was a regional parks district.
Different, same in the sense that they would be, governing bodies, right? It would create another governing body. That was a metropolitan park district,
It's okay.
but this is a public facilities district, so there's some distinction.
So Lacey could create a PFD because they're already part of the PFD instead of what they attempted to create. I know they're different. I'm just working my mind around
Sure.
it. Okay, thank you.
Yep, you could add an additional PFD in this area for the purposes of aquatics or regional sports center.
but a new PFD in Thurston County can only have 4 constituent parts. We know them. But it doesn't have to be all 4 again. It could be any 2 of them. Actually, theoretically, could it just be one entity? Could the county or Tumwater create a public
Any city,
by
or
itself?
town,
So it doesn't have to be a multi-jurisdictional deal. It does need to be 2. It has to either be 2 cities or a city and a county.
for this particular purpose, for the additional aquatic facilities. Yeah, I think we're talking two things, but I think the question I heard was, could a city, if it didn't have a PFD, create a PFD that's not the additional PFD? So
No,
the answer is no.
No, I meant to say, well, could the Tumwater and the county create their own public facilities district for a regional aquatic or additional sports facilities?
First line says yes.
That's what I understand it. So, but it doesn't, but if the county and Tumwater are interested, that doesn't mean that Lacey and Olympia have to be a part of it.
No.
They could just do their own thing, as the county and Olympia, Lacey kind of did with the RAC originally. Okay, thank you.
So
I'm catching up.
well, I want to make sure I understand this too, because this narrowly deals with Senate Bill 5001, some very specific criteria. But if the city of Yelm, they're not eligible for this, but if the city of Yelm wanted to form a public facilities district to build a history museum, could
The choice.
would they? It seems like there's another body of law that allows individual jurisdictions to create a PFD.
So my understanding, and I'm gonna look back here to this group, is that yes, a city or town, and then it says or group. So it could be singular or a group, but there does have to be a regional facility, right? So it does have to contemplate how it would be regional in nature. And I believe that statute is chapter 35.57 RCW, and we'll take a look to confirm that, but that is how I'm.
And I don't want to belabor it. I just want to make sure I was hearing.
But the clock is running out on that regardless, unless amended by the legislature subsequently.
That, yep, as you can see, that would expire July 1st, 2026.
Less than, well, almost a little over a year.
7 months.
So I have a question. So the new hands-on museum, when does that end? When does that expire? How far out is that going?
I'm not sure I
How
understand.
many
the
years?
question.
What year do the new bonds terminate?
7.
What are they paid off?
It was
We can
one
go up
more.
to 43 or 57.
Well, my question is, what is it? If it's over 42, then I'm not sure that we have updated our records to authorize that. So that's what I'm trying to allude to is, are we consistent? Have we authorized them to be past 43 and yet we've not amended our to accept the second extension here? So I just want to make sure that we cross our Ts and dot our Is and haven't stubbed our toe.
Same
Going back
question
to
you had.
my question about the
Yeah.
interlocal agreement, because it
New
was
interlocal
updated.
agreement.
Yeah,
It was updated in 2023 to reflect the first extension, but I don't,
right.
because this just happened 2025, this year.
I think we all assumed that we amended it, but I don't think we did.
And that is on the list of things we will certainly go back. and
Yeah,
take
but
a
I
look
just
at.
want to make sure, did it cause anything? And well, let's make sure we get our T's crossed and our I's done.
I can answer the first question. So the interlocal agreement extended it only 15 years, not 30. So it's only a total of 40 years at this point. So President Bryan is correct. We'll have to sometime in the next 15 years or so, we'll have to go back and amend that.
That's up to the jurisdictions, not this board. That's the interlocal.
Correct.
Can these slides be made available as a takeaway?
Absolutely.
Oh, thank
Yep.
I wouldn't mind a copy, you too,
Sure.
in case everybody forgets, and I still have them.
And just for awareness too, we can absolutely get printed copies, but they are also available online on our website right now.
Oh,
under
then I already
public
have
meetings.
this?
Mm,
Okay.
I would like a printed copy.
Absolutely, we can make sure to get that, so.
Old people like printed.
Yeah, old people like printed stuff.
All right, well, I will continue on, but please jump in if you have additional questions. So we've talked about kind of the CAR-PFD and the breakdown of where the revenues from the credit go to. Just want to highlight here that there is a slight change there's a kind of a threshold set at $40,500,000 where projects for the Hand-On Children's Museum received 28.2258%. Lacey received 71.7742%. And then once you go over that $40.5 million, that ratio changes and it goes 33.3% to the Hands-On project and then 66.6% to the RAC project. And I think Troy briefed this group on that change about a year ago. The cities of Lacey and Olympia are responsible for financing and project management, ownership, and the maintenance of the two.
So I'm confused
facilities.
with what you just said.
Yeah, absolutely.
So where are we now? What,
For the collection?
yeah,
Yep, great question.
I'm sorry, I was looking at the
Are you
Olympia
still at
finance.
2872?
That's correct. We are somewhere around 37, between 37 and 38 million. My prediction is sometime in 2027, it will switch to the 1/3, 2/3.
okay.
But for what it's worth, the financial feasibility review projected 2028 and we hit it, but you're working with those numbers all the
Yeah.
time. So.
Well, Olympia was very conservative in terms of their debt financing and making sure they had adequate funds to pay. Well, I have the floor, sorry. The Olympia debt is through 2055.
That answers your question.
I'm sorry I missed it. I was making a note.
The recent Olympia debt for the Hands-On Children's Museum it's 30-year debt essentially. So 2055 is the last payment.
2025,
2055.
55, okay. So yeah, it says that we've done that, but we haven't amended the interlocal to allow it.
Sounds like we were adding a few things onto the list to bring back to this board, and then also obviously an interlocal agreement to consider bringing back to all of the rest of the jurisdictions. All right, so I think we've already mentioned a few of these agreements as part of this discussion, but there are a number of PFD agreements. So we have the interlocal. This is for the creation of the PFD. We've also had several amendments. It sounds like we'll have conversations again about future amendments as well. We had an interlocal agreement regarding the RAC, an interlocal agreement on the Hands-On Children's Museum, and then there's also an administrative and financial services agreement with the city of Lacey.
So, having read through the hundreds of those pages, I'm confused about there are agreements, there's charters, and there's amendments. And the amendments seem to be amendments to the agreements. Is the charter is the charter like the Constitution that controls the statutory arrangements in the agreements? Am I getting the drift correctly?
The original.
So the charter is the supreme document, and underneath that are the interlocals, and then the amendments to the interlocals.
Yeah, the interlocals implement
Okay,
what the charter was.
thank you.
And so we do have a lot of those materials provided as part of the packet today as well. So I know you're asking about a number of the questions in the interconnected and connection. What I do want to highlight is with the interlocal agreements, when they were brought to the jurisdictions for both consideration and then future amendments, you do have, at least from what we can find from the Lacey side, you have it adopted with the interlocal agreement and the charter at the same time. So having both of those documents approved by the legislative body. All right, so I know you all know this. One of the things you do is meet annually to review and approve financial statements. You issue an annual report to the public on the use of the funds. You receive an annual update on the 2 projects and facilities, which you'll do here in just a second. And then you'll conduct any other business of the board, including overviews like this and getting background. And then, making sure that we take a look at some additional items here and bring it back forward to a future meeting. And then it can have additional special meetings as necessary, as you all have seen through this last year with the Hands-On Children's Museum project coming back a couple of times for discussion and consideration. We've already talked about this as well as part of the construction. You've got elected officials from Lacey, Olympia, Tumwater, and Thurston County appointing the 7 PFD board of directors. And what you can see here are the jurisdictional representatives. They're appointed directly by the legislative bodies of those governments. And then you also have your district-wide appointees who get appointed by all 4 of the legislative bodies. Members can serve 4-year staggered terms, and there's no limits to terms served. And so we do have an original member who's still with us from day 1. And thankfully not as part of the board. We had another one join us today to provide some background and context.
Shannon?
Yeah, absolutely.
So John was one of those who's in the block of the lower right. You were the foundational example of that.
I was the first person.
All 24 votes or whatever it
Yes.
was. And is there any, and who are the current members who are the district-wide representatives again?
So,
Was it on that sheet?
Yep, on the roster.
good.
Not mine. The one they put out.
Yeah, Jeff, you are, Ann Campbell, and then, board member Lane.
All the jurisdictions have to approve those people. They can individually approve their own, like me in the case of Tumwater. Thank you. Is that a function of the charter, or is that a statutory arrangement that we see here?
Yeah, it's included in
I think
both. So it is, and it's, yeah.
A statutory
RCW
provision that's
included in
incorporated
there.
in the charter.
Yep. Thank you for not making me go through all of that and find that.
I wouldn't wish that on anyone.
Well, it sounds like you were here just the other day doing just that, so. Roles and responsibility, we've got our president serving over here and reviews staff proposed agendas and drafts. I know you've been working hand in hand with Troy and Alyssa on creating this. Chairs all of the meetings, approves payment invoices for board approved expenses, authorizes the city of Lacey to distribute revenues, and can attend the out briefings of the Washington State Auditor's staff. We also have our secretary treasurer over there, board member Parsons. Along with the president, approves payment for invoices or board approved expenses, grants the authority to the city of Lacey to distribute revenues, reviews annual drafts of financial statements before meetings, also can attend the out briefs with the Washington State Auditor's Office, and then chairs board meetings when the president is absent. We talked a little bit about roles and responsibilities, and we'll get into more details on some technical elements, but when does a board member's term end? It ends when they leave the board, when their term finishes. So if somebody, could no longer serve, they could leave, or if their term expires. The PFD for legal responsibility is responsible for managing its own legal matters, as we've heard previous discussions over this last year. And if legal representation is needed, the PFD can hire an independent third-party legal counsel, as it recently went through that process.
That's how we started down this road.
And here we are a year later, and we're wrapping up some of the loose ends and finding some other ones. Roles and responsibilities, the City of Lacey's Finance Department. So thank you, Troy, and I know Alex is on this call as well, is responsible for the accounting functions of the PFD. And the City Clerk's Office, so Alyssa Fontaine here, is responsible for some of the administrative functions, such as preparation and publication of all meeting materials, including minutes, in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, which we'll get a briefing on here in just a second. But before we do that, I know there's more questions, so
Is there any, oh, I'm sorry.
I remember all.
Are there any other carve-outs other than legal representation that the PFD is responsible for that slash not otherwise provided by the city of Lacey? Or is legal representation the only carve-out, which is of course my term for it, but is there anything else that we're, if you will, on our own for?
So carve out, you mean like services in addition
Yeah,
to?
any administrative function that you can imagine might apply to any municipality. Because we're in this discussion because it became evident to our secretary treasurer rather forcefully that everyone else had legal representation, but the PFD did not. That's in many respects why we're here now. But my question is there any other standalone functionality that is that we are obligated to as a municipality that is similarly carved out so that we are on our own to provide?
So,
Well, we have no staff
correct.
because that's provided by the city of Lacey. So does that assume every other thing other than legal representation we're on?
I guess I'll frame this maybe a slightly different way, and I know, John, looks like you have an addition, but I think what we see in the interlocal agreement and the charters are the express, kind of administrative services being provided by the city of Lacey. But I don't know what other additional services you are considering, but I think that's the kind of is what is in there rather than what's not in there.
Well, I have one in mind, but rather than flavor the conversation, I was just wondering if there was an approach to the whole nexus that everyone had knowledge of forethought. The city of Lacey does everything except legal representation. We've established that. Is there anything else that's in that category that we know? Because it seems to me there's one area of potential discussion there, but
I'm a little confused by the question, but so when you say accept legal representation, but I don't know what that, if we have a legal question, we can still go to Lacey Council and ask a legal question. They can't represent us because they're representing the city. But so I'm a little cautious about saying accept legal questions. It would accept legal representation,
well,
but and same thing with accounting. If we had, if our audit says Lacey's doing something wrong in accounting, then we have an obligation to get that fixed somehow. So I'm not sure of the question. I think our obligation is to make sure that everything is functioning right.
well, if we can go back to the previous slide.
John, while I'm heading,
Yes, John?
Let me add one little thing. I don't know if I would categorize it the way you have, but in the beginning it was very, very crisply made clear to us. The PFD has the responsibility to report to the public, to the citizens, about how their public tax dollars are being spent. And early on, we took a policy position of making sure that the audit reports and the financial reports each year, and Dean Waltz used to do a lot of them for the city of Olympia, be deposited with the Timberline Regional Library and any other public entity that would need that information, including all the jurisdictions, of course. And so the only obligation that I remember that we really had to pay a lot of attention to is make sure those financial reports were available to the public in a way that they could be accessed. And of course, the world has changed with the internet and everything else, but that was the thing that I remember. And I don't know if they're still doing annuals, but in the beginning, the state audited us every year. State auditor would come in and we had to sit for an interrogation, basically, for 8 years. And they would question every paragraph and every semicolon. So I don't know if that's still true or.
it's at every 3 years.
It's every 3 years now, but it changed because of our history or size or whatever, but it's now every 3 years.
We're back to the slide you were asking for, Dave. Is that the one you wanted to bring back up?
I'm sorry. Well, let me, So it doesn't appear as if there's anyone that, a function that anyone's cognizant of them, other than maybe a public relations or public rewarding, public notification function.
Yes, public
But-
notification.
But the original interlocal agreement, 25th day of June 2002, says in section 7, the district, not Lacey, the district may maintain insurance at its expense to protect itself and any director of the district against any expense, liability, et cetera, et cetera. So that seems to suggest that's a specific interlocal agreement denominated functionality that is specific to the district, that it requires the district to initiate by its own volition, that it's not covered by any penumbra
Yeah,
that fall, none of the city of Lacey,
we were
penumbra
to
covers that.
buy professional errors and omissions liability insurance. A lot of groups do that.
The question is, does this one?
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
Yeah,
We do.
it's covered.
Yeah.
Okay. So is there anything else then? So self-insurance and
We pay the cost of audits, we pay the insurance.
okay, and our own legal counsel to the
We
extent.
pay any expenses we create, like our legal.
Right, okay,
And I think that's it. Early on, we had this whole discussion about our focus was to make sure we could get every penny we could to the projects,
right.
not use it for areas that we can get from the jurisdictions. So if they can provide some support, we save that money, which then the money goes into the projects. So that was early on discussion in this board.
Okay. Well, that, I'm glad to hear that we have, that the district has its own insurance
Yes,
in that
we do.
regard. And I guess lastly, in this vein, does the city, the staff support financial accounting primarily that it provides for the public facilities district? That's provided in kind. It's not reimbursed by PFD resources to subvene those expenses.
That's correct. Lacey does not.
Lacey does not make a charge against the PFD revenue stream to pay for that function.
No,
I
it-
did Olympia in the first 8 years.
Okay, great, thank you.
So I did hear a comment from John here about public notifications. And so that kind of is a great segue into the next portion of this. So the short answer is yes, we still do notify the public as necessary. And so I'll hand it over to Melissa Fontaine, who's going to talk a little bit about Open Public Meetings Act.
Thank you. Thank you for the conversations. So kind of to expand on the history overview and orientation feel of all this, we wanted to go over some training requirements in open governance. So obviously, as members of a governing body, the Open Public Meetings Act requires that you take training no later than 90 days after being appointed, when receive refresher training at intervals no more than 4 years. So this is something that we are continuously trying to improve upon. This board only meets typically annually. So having this recording and resources we can make available to all of its members as well as its new members moving forward. So the PFD is subject to the Open Public Meetings Act. The OPMA was passed by legislature in 1971 in an effort to make government more open, transparent, and accessible, allowing public access to the whole details of all phases of deliberation, policy formation, and the decision-making process. So the Open Public Meetings Act covers a meeting. A meeting is defined when a quorum or a majority of the governing body gathers with the collective intent of transacting the governing body's business. Meetings do not have to be in person to be subject to the OPMA. Meetings could occur by telephone, email, or other electronic media. I would like to highlight that by definition, a meeting could occur by email, but it really should not. Those are not open to the public. And meetings held over email are committing in violation of the OPMA, which is why we have best practices been put in place where we have staff liaisons sharing passive information to you all as the board and asking that no reply alls are part of that communication. So a quorum is the majority of the governing body. Government bodies with voting and non-voting members, it's the a quorum is the smallest number of people who must be present for a meeting for official decisions to be made by voting. All of you are voting members. This is a 7-member board, so 4 would be your quorum. So public meetings or governing bodies must receive public comment at all regular meetings of the body where final action is taken. Public comment is considered a limited public forum for free speech purposes, and governments can regulate the time, place, and manner of speech, provided that the regulations are reasonable and content neutral. I will note that the public has the right to make personal, critical, or harsh remarks that could include obscenities and even hate speech. Hate speech is protected by the First Amendment. The courts have found that members of local government must follow the rules of decorum, but members of the public are not bound to the same rules. Members of the public do not have the right to disrupt the meeting, though. But I will note that mere words alone do not likely constitute a disruption by themselves. The First Amendment does not protect a hate crime offense. So hate speech is protected, but hate crime offense is different in the way that a hate crime offense is when words directly incite imminent criminal activity or consist of specific threats of violence targeted against a person or group. And this is shared. We do have resources to our chair and presiding officers that when the body accepts public comment, and if hate speech is included in that, this is a tool and a resource that this board has, that you have 3 minutes for public comment, but we cannot interject or shut down or remove somebody's right to their 3 minutes unless they meet the disruption. So sometimes you will see on these tables, we have some lists and resources and scripts for those who are helping preside over a meeting. Meeting support, we've talked about this a little bit, but the Lacey Clerk's Office helps ensure that the PFD meetings adhere to our OPMA requirements, first and foremost. So that's publishing our agendas, making sure that all of the materials are notified and presented to the public. Confirming a quorum for our meeting times, making sure that you all are able to continue on with your meeting as noticed. We also take the minutes and present them all for you for approval, and then once approved, make them available online. And then cover any proper noticing for those special meetings or cancellations or anything else that would require it. Any questions on Open Public Meetings Act?
So Alyssa, we have a framework for public comment already in place for this?
Yeah, we do. Yep. And it is highlighted on the agendas. I don't have one right in front of me, but on the footer of every agenda gives the public resources on how they can provide a public comment. We do written, in person, and remotely. So there are instructions and parameters.
In my experience going to Tumwater City Council meetings, I noticed there's a 3-minute limit on public comment. Is that just a city ordinance? There's nothing statutory about the limiting of that public comment. I mean, or do we have a time limit
Policy
on?
decision.
It's purely a policy decision.
Yep, correct. And that's that has been adopted by the Lacey City Council and many other jurisdictions. 3 minutes is
That's a comment.
It's pretty standard.
Okay, thank you.
So I think sorry.
Sorry, Shane, in the time I'm on this board, I don't recall ever having public comment that I can think of. But I mean, it could occur, and I'd rather not be flat-footed on a 3-minute rule or something like that if it something that we need to. So does this board essentially mimic what the Lacey City Council does, or do we have a policy in place?
It doesn't have its own separate policy on public comment. It does, I think, I'll work to Shannon on this, but it is, you know, templated after what Lacey has in place, just with everything else.
I think it's a good question. That's what I was actually gonna state is, so the way the city council adopted its rules is through its policy manual. So they went through kind of and figured out what is the right size. Is it, 2 minutes? Is it 3 minutes? Is it 5 minutes? What if there's, 70 people who want to provide public comment? What do we do in that circumstance? And so they ultimately landed on that, 3 minute and then having like a 30-minute public comment period. And then an additional public comment period if necessary at the end of the meeting. So that way you can get through all of the business items. But as Alyssa highlighted, that's the city of Lacey's rules. And so we currently don't have anything expressly stated, at least to my knowledge, looking here on the attendance. It's more of the how to. But we could bring back to this board, a quick kind of, contemplation of a policy of what that could look like. I know what I heard was it hasn't happened in the history of the CAR-PFD, but if, this board did want something in place, we could come back with something very similar to the city of Lacey for contemplation at a future.
Well, it does say that, at least on the agenda, that instructions and access details will be provided once registration is complete. So I'm assuming those rules, if you will, are given to folks after they register that already in place.
They are shared. And also, if you look over to the welcome counter where you could physically sign up, we do have some guidelines and instructions of when that is. And so again, tying to Lacey's process for that, but we can absolutely revisit it at a future meeting for this body's consideration.
I don't know that we necessarily have to go to the effort to create a policy, seeing as we have had absolutely no public comment in all the time I've been involved. And the president or chairman would have the ability in running the meeting and saying, okay, that's enough.
That doesn't sound like that's where you're at.
You'd like a policy to rely on, but I'm just
For me,
saying.
it could simply be that the PFD follows the same. I don't think we need to create a new policy, but I think if we all agree that the PFD board essentially mimics the city of Lacey's open public meetings conduct.
If it should ever happen, you could just make a ruling from the chair, unless overruled by the
Don't keep
body.
saying that. It's like you're willing it. So let's.
Okay.
And I think, Jim, maybe just to kind of on that comment, I think that's one of the reasons why we really wanted to take a look at this, because it is considered a limited public forum. The nature of somebody doing that could be considered censorship or abridging somebody's freedom of speech. And so that's why it was important to establish, some parameters, so that way you're being fair to everybody who is providing public comment. And certainly
Could be very costly if you don't abide by it too.
absolutely, there is a risk associated with it. And so we could absolutely, something as easy as, adopting City of Lacey, public.
To me, that would be the simple.
Okay, so moved. Oh, we're not, I can't do that. I do have a personal question. As I sit on a condominium board, and we, starting January 1st, are governed by Kiowa, if you're all familiar with that term. And we have to now, a homeowners association board, we have to put out the agenda 14 days in advance of the meeting. How far in advance do we have to have our agenda put out?
So by law, it's 24 hours. That is something that we practice as routinely as we can, usually 5 to 7 calendar days. Just to make sure that, and that's the agenda and materials. So this board does one and the same, usually in the same posting. So we practice 5 to 7.
Okay.
No less than 24 hours.
No less, or you're in
Right.
violation, and then we would not be able to hold it.
And that's what we have done in the past, but I'm just, a simple condominium association is not only
Not
that.
subject to the OPMA.
It's a separate legislation, which is why it doesn't.
Well, I understand that, but I'm just saying, I think there's gonna be an uproar on this side, you know, because if we want to get together for a fairly impromptu meeting that we have to discuss some things, we can't now because we haven't set an agenda 2 weeks in advance.
Yeah.
So everything is gonna slow down to a quagmire. So I just think as we build the arguments for these restrictive new rules for a volunteer homeowners association, that, you know, even city councils don't have to do that or city business. So I just,
Information to take back with you.
yeah, thank you for
Of course. And
allowing me a few minutes there.
I see Board Member Campbell.
Yeah, can y'all hear me?
You can.
I'm just gonna set aside the difference of opinion I have on the notification requirements that were just cited. I want to just double down on the fact that we need to be as transparent as possible to our fellow folks here in Thurston County. And if at all possible, making sure that we do very closely adhere to that minimum of a 1 week publication. And I want clarity on whether that's 1 week of business days or 1 week of calendar days.
Yeah, so the requirement in OPMA is 24 hours for publishing. We definitely strive to get as close to a week as possible here administratively. I think sometimes with where the meeting falls in the week, the preceding week can dictate when that happens. So the meeting Friday, it was published last Friday. And really,
Perfect.
And doing it any earlier, sometimes we run into trying to connect with staff, with our president, and then finalizing the materials and making sure that the accurate information is noticed to the public. So that's where that week is really a sweet spot, but it can kind of fall to 5 business days depending on if we are waiting on some finalizing materials.
Excellent. And that is published on the website. Are there any other sort of notifications that are issued or set forth?
Absolutely. So it is published on the city's website. So under our public meetings calendar, that link is distributed to all of you board members. Members of the public can also subscribe to receive notifications for certain entities that they may have more of an interest to, or all of them. For the CAR-PFD meetings, we also send out a public notice through the Olympian, through the city's website, and then physically here at City Hall, noticing that the board will meet for their annual meeting and or a special meeting, and then provide the details of how to attend and where to find the agenda once it is published as well.
And so if our whole purpose is to help finance capital facilities for the RAC and for the hands-on museum, do we also publish on their websites or send out to their distribution lists so that their membership and their frequent users are also informed?
I think that the county does have a part on their page that talks about the CAR-PFD and the members. I don't know if it links to any agendas or anything of that nature. I'd have to connect them. We don't manage what's posted on their websites, but it is not something we explicitly direct to other jurisdictions. It's something that's made public to everybody in the same access points.
Okay, it just seems to me that it makes sense to publish through those two particular entities as well, or at least give them the opportunity to know that the information has been updated since it has a material impact on them. So thank you very much. And I will stop because we have a agenda to follow. Thank you.
No worries, thank you. Just a point of clarification though, we in our Lacey Weekly, which is our digital weekly newsletter, we list public meetings that are upcoming, and I believe we've listed the CAR-PFD in the past. So we do send that out to all the subscribers to our weekly newsletter.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. All right, any other questions on public meetings? I'm gonna go to everybody's second favorite, public records. So the Public Records Act requires that all public records be made available to all members of the public with very narrow statutory exemptions. What that means is a public records is really defined as any writing prepared, owned, used, or retained by a state or local agency, which you all are a governing body in yourselves, so that applies to the materials of this board. Public records can look very different. Writing is very broadly defined, especially in the age of technology. And it's important to highlight that any communication and documents created, received, or used as part of your duties on this board may be considered a public record. There is no distinction regarding whether or not the record was created or stored on a personal device or account. I think this is part of the some of our best practices is working with liaisons who have archived content with everything that we are using here at City of Lacey or other jurisdictions to capture the work of this board. Requests for public records can be made formally or informally to any employee or elected official. It is crucial that any request for agency records be forwarded to disclosure staff as soon as possible. And being the staff liaison for this board, that would be me in the clerk's office. So forwarding, if you get a request from any member of the public or made aware of a request, making sure to expedite that and get it over to the clerk's office for processing. You don't have to process it yourself. You do not have to necessarily respond, but time is of the essence as we have 5 business days to respond to these legally. Yes.
Your knowledge, has such a request ever been made?
Not to my knowledge. We do make a lot of the board materials public, which I think also helps with that transparency. So, not having much else really to ask for, but that they are public. Oh, yes, Board Member Campbell.
So this says to any employee or elected official. Do we count as elected officials?
Not in that you are appointed by elected officials, and because you are serving a role on the district, which is a governing body, then I would stress that it does apply to you as well. All right, great questions. All right, as mentioned, the city clerk is the official public records officer for the city of Lacey, but also the staff liaison for this board. And so we have staff within our office as well as some of the other offices here at Lacey who are designated disclosure staff. So if you have any questions regarding disclosure, or if you do receive any kind of requests that you're unsure of, definitely loop us in.
But on that point, Alyssa.
Yeah.
That's by custom rather than policy. In other words, has this board ever adopted that very last statement?
No, so the Public Records Act applies to this board with
Understand
the
that.
agreement for administrative services with
That's-
City of Lacey.
Okay, so that's considered subsumed under the agreement for administrative services.
That was more information, I think, just to show how we have it processed internally here at the city, but noting that the city clerk's office is your point of contact, but we also are the public records officer, and we have designated disclosure staff throughout the city. So that disclosure staff wouldn't necessarily support this board. It was just more kind of internal of our workings.
So a public records request is made for PFD documents. By default, are you,
Send it on over. Yep,
you are
Absolutely.
officially our agent for that?
officially yet. Yep. And we work as a team. Obviously with being staff liaison, we have access to a lot of the PFD documents. But if I need to loop in other agencies or other departments, it's a team effort.
And I don't need to go into discussion about this today, but I think at some point I'd like some counsel around. I use my personal email address for all the PFD business, and there's been a lot of email this year in particular, which I assume would be subject to public disclosure.
I would agree.
And I would imagine it would be try to be limited to the PFD emails. But I've occasionally thought about establishing a separate email address specifically for PFD business. Or I don't know how other entities handle this sort of thing.
I think there's a couple different options, and there's more than one best practice. I think CCing a city staff, which I know you routinely do, is a great mechanism. A separate email, while you're not required to, it's a very clean bucket, and that is your role as a on the board of directors that you could delineate very easily. If we were to get a request, it would be a collaboration between you and staff to provide those records. You're not handing over your entire personal email account, if that
I
helps.
just don't want people knowing how many bicycle parts I bought.
No, wouldn't be subject to the Public Records Act, so we're good. All right, any other questions on public records?
Thank you.
All right. So third and final part for our training today is going to cover some Robert's Rules of Order at a very introductory level. So I'm going to look to John, and if there's any in-depth conversations, we might have to collaborate on this, but it's okay. Robert's Rules is a system that is used so that everyone has a chance to be heard, that you all know what you are agreeing to, and that nobody wastes anybody's time. So some basic rules really is taking one item at a time, one speaker at a time, using motions to take action, and motions need a second. Giving every topic a full consideration in the form of a full and free discussion, and then remembering to speak and act with courtesy and professionalism. All right, so if you're running late to a meeting, communicate with staff. This board meets typically annually, when you can, when.
Well, that brings up a point.
Yes.
I had an emergency and I tried to contact the city on my phone in the car 20 minutes before the meeting, saying that I'd be there about 10 minutes late.
You did everything right.
But I kept killing the billing department
Okay.
as I call the city of Lacey.
They're covering the switchboard. There aren't enough bodies for everything.
I'm just saying I couldn't contact.
No, you did everything right. And I will add that I think on our board rosters is the city clerk's direct phone number. And I will also make sure as staff liaison that you guys have my city cell phone as well. I recognize emergencies happen. You can't always make us aware of everything that's going on. But when feasible, letting staff know, because you know, if there is an issue of quorum and we don't know if somebody is on their way, or you know, board member lights run 10 minutes late, we could, you know, put notice to the public and then start the meeting once he gets here. That's really what that's.
What I was pointing out is I was gonna bring this up after the meeting, but since this came up.
I was not calling you out, but
You know, I was on the phone, hands-free, of course, but I said, call the city of Lacey. I was gonna get the front desk, get a message to Alyssa. And I kept getting this, and I was frustrated, and I said, oh, well.
no, that's
But,
fair.
so that's a problem between Google and the city of Lacey, that you can't get the phone number.
It's definitely Google. No, I'm
But,
joking.
I mean,
Thank you for
somehow
highlighting
that
that.
could be improved upon, I don't know.
So we will look for some improvements and sharing our contact information that you have direct access to the staff that, you know, you do need to reach. And I think it's a great point, and it happens, life happens. And sometimes you're gonna be running late or you have to miss a meeting. I think when possible and feasible, just letting staff know or the chair know, it's definitely helps construct into the start of the meeting.
Unless if you bake cookies for us, we come early.
I'll note that for 2026.
Does that need a second?
So if there's no quorum to begin a meeting, and we talked about this a little bit, but just more for training and meeting confirmation. What the board would do is, because we've noticed to the public when the meeting's to start, we do open up the meeting, especially because we have virtual attendance, and announce that, hey, it's 1 o'clock, we are waiting for a quorum. We will check back in and letting the public know that this is why the meeting hasn't started yet. And keeping that constant communication and expectations. All right, motions. A motion is how you go about doing something as a group. It's all about making the decision to do something once all the facts and opinions are laid out. Some best practices to present your motion as a positive statement. Here you have the example to move to have ice creams on Mondays. We don't have like negative motions, so I move to not have ice cream on Mondays is not encouraged. When a motion is seconded, it indicates that the proposal made should be considered and discussed. If a motion doesn't get a second, it does not get discussed. One person can have a great idea, but if the other 6 or 8 already know that they don't want to talk about it and there's no second, it does not get talked about as a group. So a good motion is a statement that begs a question with a yes or no answer. Some helpful tips is to have the motion written down ahead of time, keeping it simple and not overcomplicating a motion or don't overcomplicate a motion because it can lead to confusion and uncertainty. All right, point of order is a kind of motion, but it does not need a second. Points of order should be rare, but they are a common type of motion. Raising a point of order shouldn't be argumentative, and it just means I think we did it the wrong way. Assume good intent and take a solution-oriented approach. It does legitimately interrupt the flow of a meeting, and it must be raised as soon as the error occurs. The chair will resolve the point, and the group can disagree with the chair's decision. So, another pro tip.
Dave.
Okay,
If it gets weird, you can take a break.
didn't I know this before?
There are a number of reasons to recess for a few minutes. If the board agrees to recess, announce it to the public and to staff so that we can be informed on when the meeting will return. All right, so we talked about this a little bit with quorum and a majority votes for a 7-member board. Your majority votes are 4 in favor. So if there is a conflict of interest, the member should inform staff of the conflict and refrain from taking part in the item discussed and the vote. Once a conflict of interest is any situation in which financial or other personal considerations may unduly influence the member's judgment. It is best practice that if there is a conflict of interest, making that known hopefully before the meeting starts to staff and the chair, and then having that board member also remove themselves from the room as part of when that item is being discussed and voted on, so that they can't influence even non-verbally.
So is this just it's not really part of Robert's rules, it's just
Meeting management and some better
Yeah.
practices, correct?
because there are times in the world where you have a conflict and you just announce, I have a conflict of interest. And I'm going to step back in the discussion, but I will vote. And they can, I think, in Robert's rules. So I don't know that we'd ever have that, but
That's a good
I
note.
believe that's true.
I can't think of all the instances, but I think, yes, to your point, you don't have to remove yourself. I'm not sure if you would be able to vote if there's a known conflict of interest.
I mean, you should remove yourself.
Right.
You should not vote.
Yeah.
Or is recuse.
A recusal, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
From voting,
Alyssa,
yes.
there's also an obscure provision that I remember from my AWC training back in the 1970s, again, 50 years ago. It's called the rule of necessity,
Okay.
which if enough people recuse themselves, that you absent the quorum, the remaining members can transact business.
Mm.
Yeah. Who knew, right? But maybe that's now no longer.
I've run into this exact situation in some major corporations, so I get it.
No, absolutely. And Robert's Rules is a great resource. It has a lot of information and scenarios that
Books this, that.
Yes, yeah.
give or take. Some additional pro tips, as chair, remember to vote. If you're presiding over a meeting and calling for motion seconds and votes, you're a board member too. Ask for the nays, even when there aren't any, especially for the public, when we have remote and in-person participation, it can be challenging to know who all voted and maybe what their votes were. And then declaring the outcome. If the motion carries, say so. If the motion fails, make sure making that announcement to the board and to the public. Remote attendance. So informing staff if you will be remote is helpful but not required. It just helps us know for kind of the physical setup of the room and then making sure to watch for any kind of technology issues or impacts that may arise. When attending remotely, inform or use the raise hand feature, as we've seen today, if you have a question or would like to contribute. And then turning on your audio and video when voting so that that is captured, and it makes it very clear to the public, the board, but also the minute taker of who voted and what they voted. If possible, on that note, again, just keeping video on throughout the meeting, the chair and the public see that you're present and participating. Here right now, I am away from the clerk station and I can't see if somebody has dropped off, if they are not on video, and we are sharing a screen that takes up the majority. So that is something that is a helpful tool to visually know that somebody is present, even if they're not actively speaking. All right, so that concludes our required trainings. We've got a list of resources. Again, these slides are published online, but I'm going to get a link to them to all of you and some printed materials as well. So want to highlight the Municipal Research and Services Center. I think you're all familiar with as MRSC, the Association of Washington Public Facilities District, and then several RCWs that govern many of the things that we do, and then Robert's Rules of Order. Any
Yeah,
questions?
thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Very well done.
Thank you so much. I don't recall, I mean, John gave me an orientation when I came on the board, but since then, I don't know that we've ever done anything like this. So
Great idea.
thank you, Dave, for giving us a little push in that direction. I think this serves as a template for going forward. Including you've recorded this, correct? So,
Yeah.
okay, great. Great. We are now on to agenda item D. Shannon, it looks like you are up again to talk about the PFD Association and their annual meeting.
Great, well, I hope this one is a little bit briefer presentation coming for myself, so you can get on up with the rest of the business here. So essentially, I just wanted to, not that one, I won't be brief if I'm sharing the wrongs. We're gonna start the same 44 slide deck here. You probably don't want that one. All right, let's try this one. That is the right one. That's interesting. Here we go. Okay, third time. So there was some interest expressed in potentially learning more about a association that recently started here, and that is the Association of Washington Public Facility Districts. And if there was some interest in membership, and then also recognizing that they host an annual conference and what that looks like. And so we did do a little bit more research and diligence on this. They do have a website, and all of their information that they have right now is up. They have their own kind of bylaws and rules. And I believe those were sent out to you as well as previous materials. But just a little background on this organization itself. It sounds like they have been working to get to this point for a longer time, but they just actually became a 501c4 nonprofit corporation. So they have formed officially in 2012 as an association. They've been working through the process and recently were granted that nonprofit status. Per their rules, every PFD within Washington state is eligible to appoint a member of their board of the directors. And they can be a member of the association as long as they pay their dues, which is $750 per a year. We have the bylaws. Again, these were shared with you all, and you can see this is looking at one article, section 2, and it's outlining what the purpose of this group is to do. And you can see with A, it's to coordinate and cooperate in the development of PFD related services. The second one, B, is to have best practices for PFDs to make sure that they're having positive stewardship of taxpayer dollars. And then the third, importantly highlighting this section, is to promote community engagement and support of PFDs through legislative outreach and other charitable pursuits. We wanted to highlight the legislative outreach section of this because, as I mentioned in my last presentation to you all, there has been a lot of advocacy at the state level to get extensions of that state sales tax credit over the last couple of years, and this organization has been highly involved in that work. So in reaching out to some of the representatives there, they mentioned that member dues are largely used to influence legislation through a state lobbyist. So that is effectively the membership pays for that specifically. There are other services like the conference, that is, you would pay for the conference separate from this particular fee. They have been very active on the two bills that I mentioned previously, that 15-year extension and then the additional 15-year extension. And the reason I'm highlighting all of this is because it appears that those association activities are in conflict with the CAR-PFD's charter, which I want to get to in more detail, but I think I saw a hand up over here.
Do you know who the state lobbyist is for them? I wanted to see.
Absolutely not off by my top of my head, but it is listed here in the presentation. So if you hold on just a second, we'll get to that.
That's the question.
So when I talk about the charter, so we've kind of gone through that there's a lot of amendments that have occurred over time, but you can see here, we've got the latest amendment in 2003. This was adopted by the city of Lacey through ordinance 1200. You can see that we also have ordinance 12798, and I believe that this is the city of Olympia. Thurston County, and then ordinance number 6255 is then the city of Olympia. So this is just some examples that we could find. Obviously ours we are much more familiar with than everybody else's, but when there was the amended interlocal agreement and the charter, the legislative bodies of each jurisdiction took action to approve it. So within the amended 2003, there is Article 6 here, limits on district powers, Section 2. And it expressly states in here, no part of the activities of the district shall include any attempts to influence legislation. And so that's where, just kind of in our initial review, we see that there's a potential conflict with the activities of this state board and the duties of this board. So if you look at some of their materials, this is a snapshot of their annual conference. This was the most recent annual conference. And to get to the question of who is the lobbyist, you can see here at 10:45 to 11:30, they have their lobbyist update, and it is Jim Hendrick.
I know him.
And so this is their full conference, and you can see that plays a really big part into their conferences, talking about the activities at the state level. So with that, I just wanted to pause and open it up to the board, see if there's any questions about the materials that we just went over.
One of the things on my, well, I don't want to congratulate myself, but I think it's been helpful to bring into sharper relief that through accretion and through no one's fault, but just human nature, a lot of stuff has kind of become customary and has kind of become, I don't know, less rigorous than it should be. Do you agree, Mr. Chairman?
Well, this is my first year in the chair.
Yeah. So the point of which is that it seems timely, especially since the extent of this body is going out double the time originally envisioned. We're talking 2056. None of us will be around that, or well, none of us, well, I'll just speak for myself. So it seems to me it would be well advised, either for the city of Lacey, because you have your own knowledge and familiarity. This board can do it by virtue of a motion that is moved and seconded and voted on. Could recommend a restatement, a conformed restatement of the charter for this PFD. My sense, my intuition, without being able to go into chapter and verse, is that it's time to do that, given the now extended longevity of this group as a board, including being able to address the very point you highlighted there, that the state association is engaged in legislative advocacy, but we would be prevented from doing so. Although I suspect City of Lacey separately, City of Olympia separately has their own means of getting to the same endpoint. But I'll just stop there. I think it might be time, maybe in time for next year's annual meeting of this board, to develop, recommend to the jurisdictions a conformed restatement of the charter. So, because as somebody who, again, for the third time, who tried to go through this, it's a very dense database of instrumentation that governs this body. And that, my instinct, my intuition tells me that's not a good thing, that there ought to be kind of a constitutional convention, like cleanup of all of these things where many of these matters are clarified, including the most recent one you identified, which is being able to be members of the statewide association. I'm not making that motion, but I'm just making that as an observation, something to consider in the future.
And I'd like to tag on to that and let anybody else have a weigh in on that?
Well, in addition, every group association has a designated, I shouldn't say every because that's really wrong. We have a dedicated time when we meet every year for the annual meeting. When I first started, the annual meeting was in the spring every year. And then it moved to May, then it moved to July. And then we couldn't meet in July because nobody was here. So we moved to August. And now this year we're in November. So when is, I would venture to say we are close to skipping a year in that we've been involved for 15 years and we've only had 14 annual meetings. Not that that's terribly important, but we should set a time where we meet every October.
And my eyes are still spinning from going through the 300 pages that I thought I saw in there somewhere in the charter or one of the amendments that there is a specification about how there's a deadline within which board is supposed to meet and approve the annual financials from the previous year. And I can't recollect what that is, but
I don't recall exactly what you're referring to, but what I can say, and I think it maybe fits into the point that both of you are just making, is there are other references in the documentation to meeting at different intervals. So for example, I believe I recall finding one reference to quarterly meetings. And so that's certainly something that was in there. And I think maybe what I'm getting pinged here is on the annual meeting, it's obviously the duty that you all are assigned needs to occur annually. And that's why that happens before the end of the year. And that's kind of the timeline as we've moved it to make sure that we're meeting that specifically. But there are different references to different times in the voluminous materials you have received.
I saw Troy had his hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. It'll be the recommendation from the accounting side that we conduct a meeting sometime before May each year. Two reasons. One is the annual audit. We're required to actually file statements within the first 150 days of the calendar year following the year that we're reporting on. So that's one reason. But the other reason is relatively new, and it came up during the review of the Olympia debt, and it was the SEC disclosure filing. So accounting staff here at Lacey will be working with Olympia's accounting staff to get that financial data, to get that posting done each year. So it's another new requirement coming towards this board or this district because of that debt. So I'd recommend having a meeting sometime in April to make sure we get that done.
You want to have any objection to focusing on an April meeting a spring meeting going forward?
Well,
And this would be, President, just to clarify, in addition to a fall meeting as well for the annual report?
I guess I was talking about the same thing, but maybe I'm confusing the two things. When should we meet to approve the financials?
That would be spring from our,
That's what constitutes our annual meeting.
It has in the past, yes.
Well, I'm thinking those are one and the same, and that our annual meeting would take place in the spring rather than late fall. It's occurring now.
Great, thank you for the clarification.
Okay, thank you. And to tag on to what Dave was saying, I found that, I mean, the orientation has been fantastic, and it's been a kick in the butt for me to go back and read all these documents because I've seen them piecemeal over time, but it is arduous to go through these mounds of documents, many of which are just repetitive.
Yes.
And for purposes of the board and for me as the chair, I think it would really be helpful if we had a board book or a board manual of some kind that had the latest, cleanest copy of the interlocal agreement, the latest, cleanest copy of the charter, and the latest, cleanest copy of the financial agreement that allows Lacey to conduct our ministry. So we have one point of reference document that is the most current document and doesn't require us to try and keep track of I mean, it's for history purposes, it's great to see the progress of the amendments that have taken place over time. And kind of follow the machinations of the PFD and you brought some things to light that I haven't
A
seen
book like
before.
that.
So some sort of booklet that actually has for quick reference or for annual review and refresh, we have all these documents that aren't marked up, that are actually written out as and with the full language. We can read and
Not the signed documents, not the ones with the dates and the signature blocks
Right.
left vacant.
Actual signature.
Actually, yeah.
something
Solid recommendation, Dave. Fully agree. That'd be
that would
good.
really help me. And for what it's worth, for today's meeting, I spent this week going through the Olympian archives, beginning with the collapse of the convention center to the groundbreaking, or actually to the issuance of the bonds for the HOACM. And there's a long history there that I'm starting to capture, and I will share with you all when I feel like it's been vetted and filled out properly. You brought some things today. I've started, I've already begun it. So, but I believe me, the period between when the convention center was abandoned and the selection of the rack and there's a number of newspaper articles within that period, which were all based on what happened in this room with the steering committee. That was a long history of back and forth, and we don't need to go into today, but it'd be nice to capture that history as well, because some of us have been on the board a long time and won't be around to have that written down. So I'd like to get it as a resource for going forward for the board.
And give it to all history commissions.
There you go. I put on my Dave McAndry hat. Sat in front of the computer all day yesterday and dug into archives, newspaper archives. Anyway, any other comments on I guess the other question is, if Tumwater, City of Tumwater wanted to attend this conference, do they need to be members of the association to attend this PFD
I
conference?
can't speak specifically to that question. I do know the person you could contact
Yeah.
to find that information, but we could ask that question.
That's the only.
Do you know when the next meeting is?
I don't, but it appeared that they were typically in the fall, September area.
That's my recollection too.
October, I believe, was this year.
How
Okay,
many dues paying members are there now?
Great question. We can follow up with that. I don't know that information off the top of my head.
You mentioned a number earlier and
27 or 27 PFDs, I think.
that was back when
Oh,
John
buyout
was
consideration.
what he did, but I think there's a
Probably
couple
more.
hundred now.
yeah,
Really?
Was that, because at $750 membership, that's not a very expensive lobbyist, is what I'm thinking. You know, if
it's
you had,
contract obvious, so.
if you had 50 PFDs, what is that, $25,000?
$25,000.
Yeah. So, dedicated, so I'm just asking.
Okay, I think that wraps up discussion on the conference, and we are up to our main purpose for being agenda item E, which is the annual financial report.
Thank you, I appreciate it, and
Thank you.
just want to
Yeah,
confirm that we've heard, kind of clean up the book and look at a May meeting or springtime meeting for the next.
And I want to be clear that I deeply appreciate all the work that was done to bring those materials together.
Yes.
This has been everybody spent a lot of time on it. That's a lot of documentation to bring into one place. It's helpful. Great, thank you. I'll be brief.
Ms. Campbell has a,
Yes, and
Well, I want to wholeheartedly agree and support getting a matrix of what is currently enacted versus what needs to be put into an appendix as purely historical background information. And before we weigh into a discussion too much about meeting up in the spring about financial matters, I would strongly suggest having maybe 2 meetings. One meeting to go over the financials and one meeting for any action items.
what action items would you contemplate that second meeting for, Ann?
We have no earthly clue because this is the first year I'll have gone through one. But just if we have to do any action items, I know I, for one, am going to need a bit of time to review the financials and to get any questions that I may have articulated, or at least getting clarification if we are asked to weigh in on anything.
Yeah, we could always cancel it if we don't have actions. But put it on the books anyway.
There you go.
Like Ann, I have no idea what to expect, so I'm not too sure.
Okay, 2024 annual report that presenting today. It's pretty simple. We basically spent every dollar that came in, but that is exactly how this district is set up. So both revenues for 2024 and expenses equal to $2.74 million. In terms of the revenue side, the sales tax was about 2.63 million. We had interest earned of just over 11,000, and then we had reimbursements of 5,000. And I'll explain the reimbursements on the expenditure side. So on the expenditure side, we made distributions to both the Olympia and Lacey projects per interlocal agreement, and the 71.8% for Lacey and 28.2 for Olympia. The reimbursement, it relates to the liability insurance for the board. It's $5,000 a year. That actually gets reimbursed back from the 2 cities to pay for that. So that's why we have that reimbursement. So again, just about every dollar that came in went out. This district's ending fund balance ended up at $80,670. This is a relatively, just to give a little more background, especially to the new board members, this is a relatively simple in terms of transactions, but you can see from the annual report, it's relatively complex as well. But it's really just bringing in the sales tax. We get sales tax distributions once per month throughout the year. Along with that is interest, and that's where our interest earned came from. So our sales tax comes from the state. The state collects the entirety of the sales tax. The state holds that tax for 2 months, essentially. So that interest is while the state is holding on to those sales taxes. And then on the expenditure side, like I said, we basically distribute every dollar that comes in per the interlocal agreement formula. So it's really kind of as simple as that in terms of transactions throughout the year. I'd be happy to answer any questions, but the action requested for you today is by motion to approve the 2024 annual financial report.
Well, I'm going to move the motion to approve the annual financial report as presented, just so we can get it on the table and then we can have discussion.
Second.
Moved by Ken and seconded by Chris to approve the annual financial report. Discussion?
wish to speak to it, Mr. Secretary Treasurer?
What's that?
Do you wish to speak to the substance?
Well, I would say, let me just say this, that I review it in advance and I go through all the notes and everything looked fine, perfect to me. I had no questions that had to be answered, and no changes.
And I think that's part of this process, that we need to get on the record that you did your diligence.
Yes.
Any other comments or questions?
Can we have some brief definition of the administrative expenses that were incurred?
I believe that is the insurance. So are you talking about the 5,000?
Yes, sir.
Yep,
Yes.
that is all.
Was that identified down a lot lower?
I believe so, yeah. It's called out as insurance.
Yeah.
Yes, I see it.
It's
Insurance. That's the only expense.
That is for this year, so back to earlier conversations the board was having, the next audit will actually take place next year. So that'll cover, see 24, 23, 22. So you'll have about the same amount roughly in additional administrative expense that's paid to the state auditor. It's typically been around $5,000 per year.
Well, I don't see, I'm sorry, I'm coming to this late and I don't want, like, with someone like Ms. Campbell said, I don't want to hold up the agenda. What page is the audit item on your report, Troy? I see expenditures, PFD payments, 2.6 million, insurance 5,000. I don't see any other expenditures.
But there isn't for 2024.
Okay. That was your point.
Next year.
Got it.
Next year.
Got it. Okay, sorry.
Exactly.
So, and when we do the audit, we have basically made it I think it's the opening, made it available to all the board members to sit with them. I usually do, although I think it was been by Zoom maybe last year or two, which made it really easy. But you'll be invited, you don't have to.
And you have a question, comment?
Yeah, I'm doing the math, and mind you, I'm not doing in-depth math, but according to the earlier slide deck, 66.66% supposed to go to Lacey, right?
That's not until the total collections reach 40.5 million, which we have not. So the current distribution is roughly 71.8% to Lacey and 28.2% to Olympia.
So what is the current supposed to go to Lacey?
71.8%.
Okay, thank you. That math makes a lot more sense.
And it actually goes out 4 more decimal places if you really want to get down into the.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't need to do that. That was just
Okay.
a quick back of the napkin math.
Okay. Yep, great question. That'll change sometime in 2027 or 28. It'll go to the 1/3, 2/3.
If there's no further discussion, call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Motion carries. Next up, item. Just to tie it, the item F is really just to tie a bow on everything we did during the special meetings during the summer and fall. As you saw from Troy's email, the City of Olympia has issued the bonds have closed for proceeding with the HOCM expansion project. Prior to that, we approved the conduct of a financial feasibility review as required by state law by the Department of Commerce. That was completed very favorably. I think a copy of that was sent to you earlier and was also in the board materials here. Foster Garvey took a look at the documents that we considered, we conditionally approved earlier this year and had no recommended changes. So that went forward. Basically, everything got signed off in anticipation of the November 18th bond closing. All those documents were signed per the board's direction by me, and the bond will be issued and the project's expansion is going forward. Thank you for all your work this year on that. Any questions? Great.
I have a comment.
Yes.
Thank you to you for all of the driving to make all this work and get all the information out to all of us. And, you know, to get this thing concluded and keep this moving forward. So thank you.
Oh, it wasn't what I expected when I took on the board chair last year at this time, but it was a busy year and it was challenging and you guys kept me on my toes, but I appreciate it. We got it. We got to where we needed to be, which was to continue moving the one regional center project forward in their expansion. And I think the RAC is going to be coming back with something like this. When do you anticipate us going through this process again, Troy?
The early first half of 2027. So Lacey's debt, the original debt expires at the end of 2027. So we have to have debt in place in order to continue the sales tax credit. So about a year and a half from now.
So next year we'll be doing some discussing about how that moves forward. So we're a little more prepared.
We learned a lot through that process. A lot of that was brand new. I don't think this board went through the same steps during the original debt issue. I think there was some legislation in 2012 that increased the amount of board involvement and due diligence in those debt issues. So yes, we'll take away what we learned from the Olympia process and be a little more forward acting, I'll say.
Thank you. And
Just to provide some historical context, that was a direct result of when the convention center in Wenatchee ended up defaulting. I wanted to say I appreciate all of the hard work that you've done. It is hard work and it is appreciated.
thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, well, let's bring up our Hands-on Children's Museum folks to give us an update.
All right, well, thank you for having us.
From down here.
I was reminded, Patty isn't here this year. Patty was here last year, but she lost her voice and Alex was the voice of Patty.
Yes, I was Patty's voice last year and we're here for her again today.
You want me to sit?
We're gonna be in the presentation.
That's fine.
Do you want me to go up there?
No, you stay back
Okay,
there.
okay.
It's good.
Okay.
Yeah, Patty's on a flight right now from Japan. So she's been in Japan for the last 3 weeks. So good for her is what I can say. Thank you. All right, so we're going to go into the presentation. Feel free to ask any questions as we go. I definitely like that methodology, so.
Should we
I know you
introduce
like that.
ourselves first?
Yes,
Jonathan?
we'll introduce. So you go.
Yeah, I'm Marina Shaughnessy. I work as the grants manager at Hands On and I have been there for about 10 years.
And I'm Brandon Staff. I'm the current COO at the Hands On Children's Museum, so Chief Operating Officer. I've been there about 9 months now. Been in the community since 2019, Tumwater resident on the Planning Commissioner for Tumwater, on Experience Olympia and Beyond Board of Directors. So I believe in tourism. I believe in this area. I believe in history. My family founded Tumwater. So I'm a direct descendant of George and Isabella Bush.
Wow.
So lots of things here. So
This is local royalty.
so we'll chat a lot later.
Good as it gets.
No.
Tumwater takeover.
Yes, Tumwater takeover. So
I do represent Olympia. I grew up here, went all the way through school here.
Talk
But
after.
Yes,
I'm not
we will.
royalty.
Yes, we will. So that's a little bit about me, but we'll kick off with our expansion and everything, Hands On Children's Museum. So we've been at our current location for about 14 years, as most of you probably are aware. We serve over 300,000 visitors annually. We are the most visited children's museum in the Pacific Northwest, so very proud of that. Committed to access, so 130,000 people have received free or reduced admission, and we are consistently winning different awards. So we just won Best of South Sound and many different awards for what we do. I will say I'm very proud to work at the Hands-On Children's Museum. I was a member before I started working here. And I have a 2-year-old that goes there quite often. So I'm not just there working, I'm there playing as well. So we are a destination museum. This year to date, as of I think it was about a week ago, we were at 264,688 visitors. We get visitors from all 50 states. We get visitors from 22 different countries, 6 different territories, and we have a tremendous amount of unique zip codes. So we provide an economic impact of $12 million.
And that's just year to date.
Yes.
It's calculated at $12 million.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's one of the great things that we do is we are destinations. We're constantly bringing people in and fulfilling what we feel is part of our mission for the area. So Blippi, I don't know how many of you have kids, grandkids, or anything like that. He is actually founded here in Washington State and started going to the museum years ago. This man now makes quite a bit of money doing what he does. I kind of liken him to the Pee Wee Herman of our time or something like that. But he is featured in 32 different videos. So over 508 million people have seen his videos and of the Children's Museum.
And truly, people are saying so often, I mean, we say New York, Louisiana, California, but it's also just like Bellevue, Portland, everywhere. People say, I came here because my kid.
The trike race. So he rides a trike and kids are like, I want to ride the trike like Blippi does. So we have a plethora of unique programming that attracts visitors. These are 3 different things that happened this year. On the left is John. He's our falconer. He comes multiple different places in the region. He's absolutely phenomenal with kids. On the right is a Lego artist from Portland, Oregon. And then in the center is a sand exhibit that we did this year, which was really, really fun and really cool. We have plenty of different visiting artists as well that stop by. These different artists keep things fresh and keep things new. We have anywhere from music to art, printmaking, and all sorts of different things. Puppets are in the center there.
It provides really cool opportunities too for some youth leadership. I can see my son's legs in the violin photo because he's part of the student orchestras of Greater Olympia, and they do what's called the instrument petting zoo and come and introduce kids to musical instruments. Instrument petting zoo, so they get to play around with a stringed instrument and see what that feels like.
And he's about 7 feet tall, so that's why you only see his face.
That's why you can't see his face.
Different special events that we have. In the center there, that's actually Alex, one of our amazing employees acting as Blippi. People do not know that he's not the real Blippi when he is in that costume. Left side, we have Fire Rescue Spectacular, which is absolutely an amazing event every year that we put on with the city of Olympia. Free event for anybody to come to. You'll see Falconer again and some other different features that we have. On the right-hand side, that is Noon Year's. So Noon Year's is a great thing to do so kids don't have to stay up until even 9 o'clock, which some kids celebrate East Coast time. We do it at noon. So we'll get into our expansion. This is currently not the image that we're working off of. Unfortunately, we're not able to afford quite this large of a building. The building's actually going to most likely be a different direction. But we are adding about 20,000 square feet and another acre of outdoor learning. The other goal is to add a STEAM experience room. No, that's not a sauna, which would be quite nice. STEAM is different learning for a little bit older group. Right now, we do 0 to 10-year-olds. We're looking from 10 to 14. So it's 3D printing. It's other different types of things that they get to do and interact with that might try and set them up for different experiences in their life. So we're all about experiential learning and growing kids over time to figure out what they really want to do.
And it helps us just extend our impact on older kids learning and attract those slightly older tweens to the museum who have kind of aged out. So it does provide more opportunity to draw visitors from out of town who are a little bit older too.
Yeah.
Would that be like a maker space for kids?
Yes, makerspace for kids,
Great
perfect.
concept,
Yep,
great
Lacey has a great makerspace, Olympia has different makerspaces, but yes, exactly that.
And we have a maker space, but it's for youngers. And so it'll be nice to have something that's a little more dedicated to the older population, older tweens, we're talking.
Yeah, get them off their phones and the challenge that parents tell us is your tween doesn't want to hang out with you and go do things. So it's like you can still have them on a different floor, have the kids upstairs. We're thinking about third floor for them. So they're not right there, but they're close enough for you to feel comfortable. And it gives them a chance to kind of meet other people in the area off their phones, off social media, experience building something with their hands, which is why we're the hands-on museum. So that's one of the really big, exciting things that we're looking for. Also to reduce overcrowding, Labor Day is one of our, Veterans Day we just had was one of our busiest days. And I had one parent that said, we're leaving because this place is crazy. And we said, yes, this is our busiest day of the year pretty much. So thank you for coming and please come back on a different day.
So before you leave, so for orientation, the left is the current building.
This is the current building, yep. And
What's the square footage that you have now?
28,000,
I think it's on a
24,000.
future- I think it's on a future
One more slide,
actually.
but so we'll get the
Okay.
exact square footage. And then to orient ourselves a little more, so this is a sky bridge in between the two buildings. This is most likely going to still be here. This building, however, is most likely going to go this direction.
Okay.
So we'll have bus parking still over on this side because we get quite a few field trips. We'll have parking lot over here and a little bit of parking lot over here. And then this building will more be this way and have outdoor exploring on around the building.
Okay.
We're also adding a preschool or expanding our preschool options, which will be on the far side of the building and have a dedicated entrance, which is really, really exceptional because right now the preschool parents say, we absolutely love you guys, but it's a pain to take our kids through the museum because they just want to play and they want to have fun and we're trying to drop them off and it turns into a 15-minute drop off. Not necessarily a bad thing to have, but definitely something we want to be able to have parents drop off, leave their kids and have separation. So this talks a little bit about our expansion from 1996 until looking out to 2028. So you'll see we've expanded. This will be our 5th time. So we've had multiple steps in this expansion. You'll see the red line is COVID, where we dropped in occupancy to 152,000. This year we're predicting, or we were predicting about 315,000. We'll probably be more around 300,000 at the end of this year. But we have had steady growth over time. In 2028, you can't see the number, but I think we're around 375,000 up there. I would not be shocked if we hit 400,000 for that first year after expansion. One of the big things for expansion is having this flexible space for traveling exhibits. So we have a really great group of people that come daily, some of them, but traveling exhibits will really give people the refreshed atmosphere. And that's about every 3 months getting a different exhibit in.
Which the traveling exhibits also are great for marketing. They're things that you can highlight to those out of town audiences to drive visitations. So your marketing team's really excited about that.
Yeah.
Is there a thought as to why you didn't hit that 315? That's barely an increase.
Yeah, so exactly. So for this year, habits have changed over the last few months. So we were having a really strong year and we were almost matching our 2024. Over the last probably 4 months, we've seen a dip in people coming. We think some of it has to do with discretional spending. Some of it has to do with we need some new things to showcase. But there's a lot.
It's also part of a really broad national trend. And for instance, we've had a lot fewer Canadian visitors this year because of various issues, various reasons. So we've seen a drop in our Canadian visitation and some, we're still seeing people from lots of different countries, but I think international, especially Canadian visitation is down a little bit this year.
One of the nice things is we have not dropped as much as others. Everett Children's Museum up in Everett, they have been bleeding badly and they are not able to keep up. A part of it is due because they're closer to the border, but we've not seen that big of a dip compared to other.
So are you gonna extrapolate that out to 28 then? So that way you're not over.
So we're at 375 right now. I feel like that's a conservative number. with the expansion hype and everything, because what you'll see is with the different expansion pieces, the growth with those expansions, it is astronomical. So we're pretty confident with those numbers.
One of the things too, and not to jump in too much, but the Portland Children's Museum closed during the pandemic permanently. It had been around a really long time. And so we draw a lot of visitors from the Portland area and around in kind of Western Oregon. And I think that's the kind of thing when we expand and we have all these new shiny things, that's really gonna drive people to come from a greater distance and get them excited about coming.
So this speaks to our square footage. So 28,000 is what we are currently at. We're looking at going up to about 45,000. This is in flux right now because we are looking at how much money we have because we're in the design build process that we have going right now. We don't want to build something that's too big or expensive and utilize our money to the best of our capability. So obviously 28 plus 20 is 48. So we're a little shy of that. But that includes some sticking points, which we'll see here in the next couple slides.
And what this gives you is just a sense of the other institutions nationally that have been models for us to try to identify what is that right size and operating budget, kind of for our operating budget where we are.
So what's that?
Don't you think we went through this?
Yes,
Yeah.
with the financial feasibility study. So we're not going to dive back into that. Expansion highlights. So part of the expansion highlights, so double our exhibit square footage. So going from 12, and this is exhibit square footage, 12 to 24,000, around 45,000 total square footage. Adding that traveling exhibit that we already spoke about, which really supports visitation and really brings in some good revenue. Dedicated early learning center, that's the preschool that's off to the side. So a dedicated preschools, as well as culinary zone. So the culinary classroom and teaching kitchen is going to be a great thing that's right above our preschool. We'll have cooking classes because everybody should learn how to cook. STEAM lab for tweens, that's what I was talking about before. So ages 9 to 12, probably more like 9 to 14, honestly, for that age group, to really keep people at the museum longer into their life. More parking, because right now parking is premium and parking is an issue on our very busy days. We do have street parking, but our parking lot fills up rather quickly. And increased space for community partnership and field trips. So right now we're not able to serve as much of a community hub as we would like. I know Tumwater is building a community center, super happy about that. But we would like to be kind of that place where people can come in and have community lessons, meeting space and different things, because we don't have a large community center necessarily or a convention center, which we already talked about.
And what we've heard from our community partners that do come in, like the Timberland Regional Library for sensory story time, is that the programming that they do is more effective when it's done at the museum or in partnership with the museum. So even our existing partners would like to do more and we just don't have the space for it. So that's where that comes from.
Yeah, and really looking for some fun WOW exhibits. We've been around now in this space for a little bit of time and there's been some technology updates. We don't like having screens throughout the museum. You see very few screens, but there's definitely some cool technology that we'd like to incorporate to bring to our exhibits. So project timeline, so opening late 2027, early 28. Here's the project timeline that we currently have going. So we've done the feasibility study. Design build process with the city is pretty much complete. Notice to proceed is complete. The PFD bond sale is happening.
Imminent.
It's done.
Yeah.
Done, yeah.
That's good.
It's November already.
Yeah, I know.
Flying by. Permitting and community campaign and the design process. So the design process is happening right now with Forma and Methuen. So they're meeting with us very often to go over all of our designs and make sure we're capturing everything possible. Community campaign, permitting starting early summer of 26. Site work fall of 26, construction November 26 to December 27. And then after that's complete, we'll install our exhibits and then hopefully open early 2028. So campaign progress to date. So funding sources, 30.6 million. We just secured $1 million from our board of directors. So our board of directors have chipped in $1 million secured, which is fantastic. Fantastic. Another thing that we actually just secured that we don't even have in here is we just got $1 million donation from a private person. So we have a lot of belief in the museum, and things are really looking great for this. So we're super excited, and we have the 20.5 million PFD funds in here as well.
And as a person who's very responsible for raising some of this funding, I just want to say thank you to all of you and your support, because the PFD funding is so pivotal. I mean, we couldn't build a facility of this kind here without the PFD support. And also, as I'm approaching funders, they want to see what percentage of your project goal have you already reached? And that a lot of them won't even look at your proposal until you're 70%. And to get to 70% of a $30.6 million campaign without PFD funding would just be unreachable. So I just want to say it just makes a huge difference in our ability to meet the community needs, and the expansion and the museum itself couldn't have come to life without this program. So.
Thank you. Questions? Yes.
Well, first, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. The last time Patty was here, I mentioned to her that the Tumwater Timberland Library had recently remodeled. And my first impression when I walked in is that it had the look of the children, hands-on HOCM. That didn't strike me as being a coincidence. So several small questions and then maybe a big one. And actually, I would like to go back to the feasibility study, because there was a question or two I had there. So the neighbor girls go there all the time. Their grandmother comes down from Bonnie Lake and they love the place. I've never been in there, although regrettably, but I don't have any grandchildren, so maybe I don't have the need to. But how do you recognize the public facilities district on the premises in terms of that being an important base of support for is it our donor wall or is it something like that you do?
So we do have a donor wall. That is a good question, because I will say a lot of people are very confused about what a PFD is.
Yes, they would be.
So one of the things is educating people on what a PFD actually is, where the funding's coming from. This meeting has been super helpful, and really something that I wish more people would look on and learn from, because it's a funding source that is not common and something that people just don't understand. So people say, well, this is a PFD, so this is our money, this is what I paid for this, so I should be able to just come in whenever I want, I should be able to use the restroom. So there is a little.
There's a risk there.
Yep. Yeah. So there is that there, but then I don't know exactly where we recognize that. That's a good question.
Patty would know that off the top of her head.
Patty would know immediately. I mean, she just celebrated 30 years. I heard 30 years for Ann, but Patty just celebrated 30 years at the Children's Museum. So she would definitely know that.
That's something I'd encourage you to consider.
Yes.
I think it's probably on the donor wall, but I can't say that with confidence.
So you were here when you heard Commissioner Campbell make the point about which is related to the question I just asked, about using your website and vehicles for getting news about this body and where its revenue comes from. Now you heard that question. Did you have any initial reaction to that idea? Does that sound like something
I think
worth exploring?
I think it's great. I mean, I would love to put on our website what the PFD is, where everything comes from. And I think we have something somewhere.
Your sales tax.
Yes, exactly. So I think that's all really great.
That would be the easiest way to do it. I think we're educating funders constantly who are pretty sophisticated.
Nobody will care about PFD.
Yeah.
Just say your sales tax at work.
No, and that's a great piece, because like I said, I've been here about 8-9 months now in this role, and there's a lot of operational type things that I handle for the museum, and that's a great question to bring up, and Patty would know it immediately. So on Monday when I see her, I'm gonna ask her that question.
Okay. Now this next question might better be put to the city of Olympia, because I think it rests with them rather than you, but in the feasibility stuff, the whole question of stress testing of the revenue stream. Institutionally, I guess probably a city/Patty question, but do you have any initial distant reaction to that? That was not done as a part of this. It was thought that it was something that might be recommended. If I read the feasibility study report.
One of the last statements, it was like
Yes.
maybe the.
It's the conclusion. The expansion plan is strong. Additional clarity between the city and HOCM regarding repayment expectations and mitigation mechanisms would strengthen the overall plan.
And I know that Patty and the city are having conversations about that. And from what I recall from reading through that document is there were three different pieces: the strong, the less strong, and then the all the wheels have fallen off and what's going to happen.
Right.
And that's where the city of Olympia is really put to the test of having to recoup that. That was the very unlikely scenario, which is helpful, but Patty would definitely have a better answer for that.
Yes, it is. It's extremely unlikely, especially in a capital city. But the report itself makes a point of saying that the taxable retail sales across the jurisdictions increased at the rate of 4.8% from 2004 to 2024. However, that sanguinity includes all of the really big growth years in the early part of the last decade. And if you look at the charts, which I found to be by far the most edifying aspect of the report, the revenue's plateauing. You must have noticed that as well.
We noticed it, and our CFO has noted it as well. And there is a conservative number that is put in there. I can't remember exactly what she said, but she said they went with the more conservative amount than that 4.1 for that reason, because it is plateauing. Because I mean, spending habits, all these different things where people are buying online versus in town. There's all sorts of things happening in the world today versus 14 years ago.
The only tax base that seems to be growing at a traditional rate near the median is the counties, not any of the cities. If I'm reading the data correctly, I'm not going to substitute my interpretive ability for the finance department for the city of Lacey, but as a layman, it appears as if the unincorporated is the area with the greatest growth rate.
That's a good question. I do not have an answer to that.
And even that's not a steep rise.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. But no, those are all great things to think about and bring up. And
Well, I think mostly for the benefit of the city rather than yourself, because you'd want to avoid ever having to deal with that institute. Actually, I did have one other question, and I know I talk a lot at these meetings, but sorry. The corporate entity of which we are a part is the Public Facilities District. And don't overinterpret what I'm about to ask, because I have another reason for asking. It has nothing to do with this, okay? But I'm active in other aspects of the community. So the entity we are part is the Public Facilities District. The RAC is straightforwardly a publicly owned enterprise because it's run by the city of Lacey, prima facie. The Hands-On Children Museum, however, is a nonprofit organization. So how does the public facilities definition get applied? I know that you have you're a nonprofit, it's a public entity, but how does the public, strictly speaking, public definition get applied to a nonprofit corporation?
I know, so the city deals with our shell and our building and our major mechanical components and all of that. So that
Does the
is,
city own the building?
yes.
Yes.
You've answered the
Yeah,
question.
so we lease it for 1 year.
Oh, okay,
Yes.
that
There you go.
answers that.
There's
Thank you.
this whole breakdown between what they do and what we do and
Operations.
yes.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Contracted
This
operations.
again,
Yeah.
naivete, lack of familiarity.
And has her
Reasons
hand
having
up for a question.
So much going through my head. Thank you for the presentation. I wouldn't worry too much about the fact that the counties are the ones who have the revenue that are growing, because the county is the entity that had the most room for growth. There have also been several law changes that have gone through in the last couple of biennium that have changed up the county's ability to collect tax revenues. I guess my question centers more on the diversification of your client base, and I would like to hear a little bit more about any outreach or any scholarship opportunities that you are providing to income eligible households, or with our coordination with our local tribal communities, such as Nisqually or the Squaxin or the Chehalis tribe.
That's such a great question. We actually have a really robust we have a suite of 30 different access programs that serve nearly 40% of our annual visitors. So that means that about almost 40% of our visitors are coming in through free and reduced fee programs. That includes, we're a national, is that what you're wanting to know about? Yeah, so we are part of a National Museums for All program, which allows people who have an EBT or WIC or now Apple Health. That's, I was gonna say insurance, that wasn't quite right. They can show their card at the front desk for $3 per person daily admission. We also we're a very popular place for supervised, like court-ordered supervised visits, and they can get in, both any of the adults that are part of that group and the kids get in for free. We have military discounts. We have sponsored field trips. So we serve about half of our annual field trips we raise funding to give them scholarships so that they can come, so that everybody has access. So we do a lot with access in general and are kind of a recognized leader in that area. In terms of the tribes too, we also have lots of partnerships. We get a lot of, we get funding and have a lot of partnerships with tribes, and they do come for, from the preschool out at Nisqually will come to field trips at the museum and all of that. So yeah.
Good question.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Anything else?
One thing Patty has often made a big deal about is the adult fun nights. With the expansion, would you see that also expanding? The ability to, because that's income producing.
I will say yes. So it is something that we tried. We were going to do a Halloween one. We ended up canceling it just because we didn't see enough sales for it. But hopefully with this additional space where we're not having to flip rooms constantly and tax our employees. I mean, it's exhausting because you have these rooms where you're constantly having to turn them over from one event to the next. And so we don't want to run our people ragged, but we do want to continue to do after hours events, not only for adults, but for families, because we recognize that there's a group of people that have dual income streams and are both working during the day and can't take their kids. So they might only be able to go after work or want to go do something instead of on the weekend. So we're looking at what times of day can we actually bring people in, adults, children, everybody. So, but yes, I love adult after hours and we do want to bring those back.
We do also have private events where people will pay to come in. And so that's a good revenue source that's going to be built up with this as well. I mean, really a lot of these additions really are focused on also increasing revenue. So providing opportunity and increasing revenue, if you think about the culinary program and camps and preschool and all of that, so.
Yeah, I heard you wanted a raise.
That was the subtext.
So my ongoing question is homeless issues. Do we still have that going on there? And
we do, not so much directly associated with the building. We've done quite a few things, and in our expansion, we're planning for it, where our outlets to the outside of the building, we can shut off, which people go to look for power, maintenance. So there's areas where you can't just kind of hide out. So we're forward thinking on making sure we're not doing those things to attract people. But there is still a challenge with where we are in relation to the food kitchen and the mission and some other things. So right now, as the weather gets colder, people change up their patterns, and we've seen some camps just pop up a street over. So there is that. We do have people that try to enter the building at times. And we do we don't have posted security, but we are very secure with our employees and our managers on duties and our supervisors on duties, and we address that very quickly. But we
Ongoing.
the ongoing constant thought. Love the city's taking some action on that.
Okay.
So.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Patty, our best.
Yes, we will.
Thank you.
Okay, get to buy an express. Will I get a new fish or will there be some other option?
We're trying to figure out some options. Yes, if you have thoughts or.
I'm gonna be really quick, guys, because we're already in overtime here.
I'm already yawning.
Okay, it's talk about the rack. Okay, we're done. Any questions?
Yeah. Oh, bring him in 27. We don't have time now.
I know, we're good, we're good. Thank you. My name is Sue Felash. I'm the recreation manager for the Lacey Parks Culture and Recreation. I've also, I don't do the scheduling stuff, but I've overseen the regional athletic complex since its inception. So I've been around quite a few years. I don't want to really date myself, but I'd like to retire soon. How's that? I always appreciate you coming. It's quite a different type of facility than the Hands-on Children's Museum. So it's kind of a whole different spin. Just kind of a quick overview. We utilize 52 weekends of the year. We have league and tournament play. There was actually 349 days used and 76 unique sports users, which comes into the next slide. We actually have 254 different unique. So there's a lot of shelter use too and a lot of park users. So different parks for shelters and reservations, there was 254 unique folks that are using it. So, Chinquale Booters, they have a whole lot of reservation, but that's just one. So we have a really wide range of people that utilize this facility. It's not only an athletic complex, it's also a wonderful drop-in facility. A third of the complex is a community park where we have an ADA play structure. We've got basketball courts. We've got a lot of things for the kids to do, and we had 237 just shelter reservations alone last year. This is just kind of, so you can just kind of get a glimpse of what's being used the most. Nothing really, just kind of interesting to see that as you know, which will come into play for expansion. The soccer field one, that is a synthetic one. That is the one that is used year round. The grass fields, we operate them from mid-March through about the second week of November. We need to shut them down so that they can rest, so that we can continue to use them. As you know, they get kind of beat up over time. Reservation wise, we had kind of shows where we went. We continue to grow. 24, we were slightly less than 23. 23, we had 14,000 hours booked. And this year, or this last year, we had 13,974. A majority of that actually was the shelters. We had 600 less shelter use hours than we did the year before. So the actual athletic fields are still exceeding every year, more and more use. This is our revenue projection. We have, we are continuing to grow. I only go back to 19, but we have increased our revenue for the fields every year, between not including the PFD funding, but money that we bring in from field revenue through some of our sports programs that we run out of there. We had $462,000, 616 in 24. So every year we have continued to grow, and we see that as growing again here in 2025. We've got more use than we have had in the past. This is just my fun little thing. It kind of lists all the different users, got to kind of break it up a little bit, make it a little exciting. We had just some of the different special events that have been out there. We've had fun runs. We had the USL, Ryan Perkins, we did their women's and men's league soccer this year. Polyfest, Reach the Beach, Juneteenth, USSSA, Pitch Nationals, and Touch Rugby, their national tournament were out there this year. Those were just some of the bigger events. Economic development for 2024, we were just under 12 million. That just kind of breaks it down by the time of year. And we get that information from the EOB. It is only the weekend use and it's primarily the soccer field, so it does not really include, it doesn't include at all the rest of the park area, which also there's a lot of people that bring in between Polyfest and all the different avenues that are not listed there. Their demographics, we had 1,420 teams this year. 742 were over than 50 miles away. 564 teams were minus. 114 were from the area. These are just some of the different areas that they came from. We had some from Cayman Islands, Canada, Japan, Hawaii, Florida. I mean, pretty much all over the United States. One of the funnest, best tournaments that we have is done by the USSSA. It's a softball tournament, but it's the Kings of the Northwest, and they bring where basically everybody, you come in and you draft teams. So you could, the first Saturday, you could be playing with somebody from Colorado and somebody from Texas. And then on Sunday, they play with their own teams. But it's kind of a neat avenue where they get to meet different people. They have a big social on Friday night and Saturday. So there's some real neat opportunities. These are just some pictures. We have flag football is out there, has been out there on Friday nights. Our playground, we have lacrosse. This is some of the camps that we had out there, the youth soccer camps. And that was our touch rugby tournament that was out there. Rack improvements. We are looking at rack improvements with the extension of the PFD. We were hoping to be able to move over to the other side, but we are not feasibly going to be able to do that. But this is kind of a sneak peek and information. This is information that we have shared with the park board recently. The main focus of the base bid is going to be on converting the soccer field to turf. It's a big grass field now, and that'll give us the ability to, I knew you'd be happy, to have a lot more programming going around year round. That is one of the areas where it is the biggest demand. Those 4 months that everything is shut down, there's just not enough space. We actually utilize the infields of the softball field for the soccer practices. We take the bases up, take the pitching deal up, and they use the synthetic infields for their soccer practices.
Creatives, that makes a lot of sense.
That's where we get so much use. Improvements will include hopefully additional seating, increase for spectator capacity on the west side of soccer field 1, which is this side right over here. Some different fencing options are going to be needed for soccer field 2. In addition, not shown here, is the softball complex, which will include some additional outfield fencing on fields 1 and 2. And hopefully we are looking at doing some concrete improvements in the baseball and some Wi-Fi improvements for the soccer and the baseball complex. We are really lacking in that area, and we noticed that when we're bringing in different tournaments, we don't have the Wi-Fi infrastructure for them to stream and to do their games, and there's no Wi-Fi up on the soccer complex at all. And the one we do have in the baseball complex is extremely limited. This is just kind of where we're at. We're not quite as far along. Oops, let's go back. How do I go back? How do I go back?
Button way on the left.
Oh, there we go. We'll just do this. That's close enough. That's. See, don't get me technical.
Lower left.
Right down here.
Right there.
There you go.
They'll have swap over.
Oh,
we want to hold it.
Oh, we don't want to revisit this, do we?
No.
Can we do Robert's Rules of Order again?
Page 20 to 44, please.
So basically, we're at about 30, we're hoping to get to about 30%.
Yes.
Design, we have been working with the consultants for that. We are hopefully, you want to talk some more about this one, Jen?
Oh, sure. I'll just, chime in real quick. See the red line that says next to design there. And so you'll see the design process goes from July 2025 clear over to 2026. So we're right in between the, July 2025 and March 2026 right now with 30% design. As Sue said, we're hoping to wrap that up by the end of this year and move into the 60% design stage in the beginning of 2026. The key for our timeline to recognize the funding is to start construction and issue debt in the first part of 2027. So we are currently on track with that.
Play fast enough for you guys? I really tried. Questions, of course. It was a given. Come on now.
Remind us what was impractical or lacking in feasibility of going across the road. I remember that report, but can you refresh?
Well, a lot of it is money, but there also was the Gophers and there were the
Gopher.
Oaks.
Go for relocation plan.
And then there's the oak trees were another issue. And
Trees.
because there's such a.
That sounds like a
slope, too.
Tumwater thing.
It just, to get it down and to get it to work was gonna be substantially more money than we have the ability to.
With the projected extension.
It will be eventually, yes, we still own, that's still part of phase 3. But for this next phase, we thought it was more prudent to make the improvements on the existing facility that needs to happen and will definitely be utilized.
So this next might be a question for Jen, but I found it fascinating going with our deep dive into the archive this week, Dave. I found it fascinating, that's the agreement John signed way back when called for 2 baseball fields sized for college and semi-professional play. Now, is semi-professional code for minor league baseball, was it? And that was that in fact what was scoped in the recent request for proposal of feasibility
For
study?
phase 3 or for the original?
No, for the
Phase 3.
phase 3.
One of them was a college size, and we were looking at that with the semi-pro. That was one of the.
And that would have been across the road.
Would have been
and that-
across the road.
And so it's not, so that can only therefore be considered under some subsequent phase construction beyond phase 3, if ever.
Right, and field 5 right now is a collegiate. We do have colleges out there, and we did have the Wooden Bat League out there playing, so.
Really?
Yeah.
Field
5, which is a baseball field.
Can you point that out, or do we not want to go back to the
Well, I
slide?
can't find the slide, but it's
In
way
the
over
interim,
here.
St. Martin's
Yeah.
built theirs.
Yes, well, they're remodeling their field.
Oops.
That took some pressure off.
This one right here is field 5.
Okay, so that is
No, that's
dimension.
not. This one's field 5. Sorry, I'm lying. No, I'm lying to you. God, I can't even look. This is field 5. Got 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the baseball field, and the colleges do play on there. St. Martin's plays on there. We did have the Wooden Bat League for a long time with Matt Acker. He had that here. That's been a number of years ago because he'd taken it away, but yeah, this is a college size baseball field right here.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll add, we have tried to pursue, a wood bat league playing again on that field. But there's a lot of challenges with having to kind of not have the adequate infrastructure and seating, being able to block it off for ticketing, and being able to, I know in other complexes where they do play, they have to black out the fields next to it and around it. And so then there's less community play for other users. And so, but we have pursued that. And to Sue's point, with the master planning process that we did early on for the phase 3 or on the west side of Marvin Road from this current complex, one of the concept plans did have more of a standalone field that would be more conducive to that.
More closed.
And one of the challenges there, as we did the deeper dive, is that there's not as much use that can happen on that field, nor does in other facilities of that type for the community when that wood bat league is not using the field. And so because of the pitching mound, it makes it challenging for other groups to use it. And, one of the concepts was maybe concerts and different types of uses, but then there's a lot of wear and tear on the facility, and it's a lot of hours for maintenance and operation. So we worked through those, but to Sue's point, the long-term plan, when you do a master plan, and that's what we hired the consultants to do, it's that long-term vision. And that phase 3 property, at some point in the future, it would be great to get those ball fields out there. But like to her point, the most feasible next step and being able to recognize this funding opportunity and for the long-term sustainability, frankly, of what we already have. The council directed us to focus on the east side and make those soccer type improvements. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, one more thing, Dave. You mentioned the gopher mitigation. So in this process, we were able to do a dive on that as well. We can, it's not a stopper, it's just very expensive. So it would have been approximately $1 million for that piece alone. But the Thurston County has a HCP that you can file for a permit, and it's a monetary permit, basically.
Gophers would be a great nickname for a team.
Yeah. There was one.
Was a soccer team.
Really?
Yeah.
Adult soccer league, yeah.
Yep.
The Mozama Madness.
That's what it should be. Any other questions? Anybody?
Phenomenal. It's just incredible that you keep that so booked.
Yeah.
Well, it is, and
It's a lot of work.
it's a highlight too, also to our maintenance staff out there. Julie and her crew do a phenomenal job of keeping it in top-notch shape, and
Yeah.
you know, we couldn't ask, you know, without them, we wouldn't even be sitting here having this conversation, because they do an incredible job. And you could
They do.
attest that there,
We
just,
just need more of these.
yeah.
Yeah, well, that's Gophers.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, well done. Thanks. Okay, last item, we're gonna look at Chris. Make the
I
question.
thought I heard you say that as I was looking to see what the last.
You're on the agenda, is, do we need to know if you're intending to remain on the board or something else?
You do not have
Well,
to decide right in this moment, but.
Well, it's not gonna be decided at this moment, but as a matter of fact, Melissa sent me a note, I don't know, a week ago or so, said, I had no idea. You know, it's just one of those things that's continued to go on.
Yeah.
The commitment is huge. So I think that there'd be no problem with continuing on. Except for my wife's health, that's the only thing. Her health has not been great lately, and that could affect things, but. And there's also a point in time when, you need to get new blood. That can learn all the nuances. Right?
So-
I mean that in all seriousness.
So is his approved by all three or by three?
By three, yes, so the purpose really just to see if you were interested in continuing to serve, and then that would be presented to all three jurisdictions for action at each of their subsequent meetings.
Takes time to re-up, yeah.
Yeah,
Right, I
so
know, I
getting
know.
ahead of, just so that we
Yeah.
had time to
Yeah.
move forward and get that on the books.
You
So,
can count on that at this point.
Thank you.
Okay. I think all our business is done, except I want to thank Team Lacey for all the work you folks have done.
You all do an incredible job. for
Yeah,
us. Thank you.
I've leaned on the staff a lot this year, and I appreciate all the help that they've given me and the board. So thank you all very, very much appreciated.
Happy to do it.
With that, happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thanks for
Yeah.
letting me play.
It's great to see you again.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
It's great.
yeah.
Yeah, it's fun.
You have to say some words.
Official,
Yeah.
Yeah,
that the official adjournment?
that we are adjourned as of
And Whitney,
3:56
thank
PM.
you.
Don't we have to make a motion to adjourn if we're following Robert's Rules of Orders?
You do
Yes.
not,
No.
you, without objection,
Okay.
you can adjourn.
Yes.
Unless there's no objection, I declare this meeting adjourned, 3:56 PM.
All right.
So declared.